11 o'clock hour of BPR. It's political analyst and podcaster Chuck Todd. We'll talk about Minnesota, Iran, our coward of the month, and the FBI's raid of the home of a Washington Post reporter.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then, according to President Trump, the economy is booming, but inflation is holding steady at around 3%. Electricity costs are rising. Yes, eggs are down, but other food prices are very high. It's fact versus Trump's fiction. Where are you in all this? How's your personal economy doing? Call or text next on the 11 o'clock hour at BPR, GBH, and NEPM.
In Minnesota, as thousands of federal immigration agents descend on the Minneapolis area, protesters have resisted their tactics. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports the Insurrection Act allows a president to deploy the military, not just the National Guard, but the U.S. Army, against civilians.
Trump posted on social media this morning that he will invoke the act if Minnesota politicians do not stop demonstrators from, quote, attacking the patriots of ICE. President George H.W. Bush was the last president to invoke the law in 1992 in response to violence in Los Angeles after a jury acquitted police officers in the brutal beating of Rodney King. However, it's also known for when President Dwight Eisenhower in 1957 called up federal troops to enforce school desegregation in Little Rock, Arkansas. Hours prior to the president's post, the Department of Homeland Security posted that an agent in Minneapolis had shot a person in the leg. They said the person is in the country illegally, resisted arrest, and attacked the officer. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
When asked about the Insurrection Act this morning, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says she considers the conditions in Minnesota violent. She says federal agents are going to look at anyone in the area when they're targeting people.
If we are on a target and doing an operation, be asking who they are and why they're there and having them validate their identity. That's what we've always done, and asking people who they are so that we know who's in those surroundings. And if they are breaking our federal laws, we will detain them as well until we run that processing.
Local government leaders and activists in Minnesota say Americans are exercising constitutionally protected free speech. Today's the last day Americans can sign up for health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act. It's going to be much more expensive for many. Congress has not extended subsidies that helped people pay for coverage. Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick broke with the GOP last year to push for an extension of the subsidies. From member station WHYY, Carmen Russell-Sluchansky reports Fitzpatrick represents a swing district.
Fitzpatrick presents himself as a pragmatic moderate, which makes sense in a district nearly evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. Scott Wadsworth, who calls himself an independent moderate, says Fitzpatrick's health care move may earn him his vote this year.
I like that he has a bipartisan kind of record. He still votes a lot with Trump, so I don't like that. But I think he's one of the better guys.
Jane Rickenbach, a Democrat, said she also appreciated it.
I am pleased that he is standing up for things like that, and he should be doing that.
However, Rickenbach said she plans to vote for the Democratic nominee in November in order to help the party take back the House.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Officials at Verizon say the company plans to make it right with millions of customers, including many here in Massachusetts, who were unable to use their phones for most of the day yesterday due to a massive outage. The company acknowledged the inconvenience that the outage caused to more than 1.5 million customers who were unable to make calls and send or receive text messages for about 10 hours. Their phones displayed SOS only. Company said in a statement that customers affected in the outage will get a credit on their bills, and they sincerely apologize for the disruption. Verizon did not say what caused the outage, but it did say there was no indication of a cyber attack. And a new report out today finds a troubling rise in government intrusion on academic freedom. The study from PEN America says more than half U.S. college students are in a state where at least one law or policy restrict what can be taught or how campuses can be run. It finds that even in relatively liberal states like Massachusetts, federal investigations and executive orders have silenced students, faculty, and college leaders. PEN America's Amy Reed says the Trump administration has weaponized government power to coerce colleges into meeting its ideological demands.
We know about battles in states like Florida and Texas, but I think the bills passed this year in New Hampshire maybe flew under the radar for many of us, even those of us who have been paying attention.
It's 47 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And from the Doris Duke Foundation.
He's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We'll be streaming there on YouTube as well, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be joined by the reinstated Cannabis Control Commission Chair, Shannon O'Brien, and a bunch of other great people. I want to mention again that we're going to be joined by the Mayor of Boston at the library January 20th from noon to 1, and Governor Healy January 30th. From noon to 1, also at the Boston Public Library. Hi, Jim.
And you almost mentioned that the former editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, would be with us tomorrow, but you stopped mid-sentence. I have no idea why. So I'll finish your sentence.
Because you don't want me to talk too much at the beginning of the show.
Right, because we have this other guy on the show, the guest guy that is coming on now. Here now via Zoom is the guest guy, political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, that's NOO Sphere. He's also host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. Hello, Chuck Todd.
Hello, guys.
Hey,
Hi.
Chuck.
Wanted to let you know I'm coming to Cambridge, I think, the first week of February. So.
Whoa!
We have got to get together.
I know,
Maybe we can watch the
We'll
Melania movie together. It's coming out on the 30th.
We should have a screening. That's a wonderful idea.
That is a great
Don't
idea.
you think?
Let us know when you're coming. We'll get the tickets.
Can you imagine? We do little like Mystery Science Theater 3000, right? You just sort of running commentary during the screening.
Yeah.
Like the Manning brothers. This is perfect.
Yeah. Right, a Manning cast.
We'll be in touch.
Oh, if you have time, we'd love to catch a beer or a cup of coffee or something.
I would love to do that.
Great. We'd love
it. Anyway,
good.
Happy newish year.
And to you.
So watch out, Chuck, because we have read now that the FBI has searched the home of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson, taking a laptop, a phone, and a smartwatch during their search of her home. What do you make of it?
I sure hope she sues. I sure hope the Washington Post has her back. This is just outrageous. This has to be litigated and pursued in the courts. Let's, find out that our Constitution still is in use, and let's use the Constitution as it was supposed to be used. This is a clear intrusion, violation of the First Amendment. So I certainly hope I know there's a lot of folks disappointed that the owner of the Washington Post has been so silent. I don't care what he says. I care what he does. So I want to see a full legal support, full financial support, and I will withhold my judgment of the owner depending on how they handle this. Rhetorically, they've said all the right things, but this should be seen as a massive escalation in what this administration is doing, and there should be because I don't think they're targeting. The irony here is I don't think they're targeting her. I think they're targeting the leaker.
Yes.
But that still doesn't, this is her laptop. It is her, look, we protect our sources. So I hope they fight this with it, because if you don't, what you do is you chill sources from frankly
Absolutely.
helping you.
Well, don't you think
that's what this is about?
Exactly.
And
it's
everybody
a test
needs
case
to understand that.
I mean, isn't that? I mean,
That's
by the way,
right.
for the three people who know, Bezos is the owner, obviously, that Chuck is talking about.
Sorry.
That's fine. It is
Mr.
a test
Prime
case
Video.
to see how far they can get away with this, right? I mean, they can get away with it, and they'll do
100%.
more. Okay.
They've been telegraphing that they've been looking for a reason to do this, trying to do this. So let's see what happens.
Talking to Chuck Todd. So Minnesota, the latest is their response, I guess, to the fact that they shot somebody else, this time in the leg, thankfully, is Trump's talking about the Insurrection Act. What happens next in Minnesota, Chuck Todd?
I don't know. You know, the fact that you have a federal government that is not interested in behaving as a de-escalatory entity here. You have them not having untrained officers using a federal badge. These are clearly rogue people that have not been through training. This is, it is damaging any reputation for any federal agency right now. And look, we've gone through this before with the FBI. They've had points in their history where they weren't trusted at all. So I someday I think that these law enforcement agencies could be redeemable. But I don't know what, it seems as if they're looking for a confrontation. The entire reason they have surged troops there in the first place was for political reasons. It was not due to anything that, this was a hotbed of undocumented criminal activity among immigrants. So this unfortunately, they're looking for an excuse and they're looking for a pretext, and it's very difficult to govern in that way if you're the mayor or the governor, right? They've tried. You've heard them say, look, they want you to act out. They're hoping you don't respond to lawlessness with lawlessness. So they're saying the right things, but they're in an impossible situation when you have an elected president of the United States and his deputies not interested in de-escalating a tense situation with fellow Americans, and that's really scary.
Well, I cannot imagine what it's like to live in Minneapolis right now, or the whole state of Minnesota. I mean, we've heard reports where there's reservations at the hotels for these ICE guys, or women too, are staying for 60 days, another 2 months of this. Yeah. And you look at these pictures and you can't even believe it's the United States of America. You see these guys patrolling the streets like you're in some... well, I guess maybe we are an authoritarian country right now. All their masks, all decked out. They got their long guns, half a dozen of them.
People face first into the streets.
Front porches. I mean, this is just, I can't believe this is happening.
It is surreal, and it's like, unfortunately, there's probably a lot of people who aren't even sure what to believe of what they're seeing online, right? We have such a distrustful information ecosystem thanks to these tech companies and AI. So that's what really worries me, is that a false narrative could be the next spark, right? How easily a false narrative could create a new spark of violence too. So no, this whole situation is horrendous, and the fact that the federal government has no interest in tamping it down, actually wants to escalate things, wants to send more troops there, wants to declare. I mean, they are looking for a violent confrontation. Our federal government is trying to incite riots.
Can I just provide context for this? We say it every day, but just so people know, in addition to the Insurrection Act, we did it, meaning military. As of the moment, there are 3,000 ICE agents in a city that has only 600 cops, 5-to-1 ratio. So just... look at it through that sort of prism. So moving. I'm sorry.
No! Just before you leave, I'm so glad you mentioned this on one of your podcasts. People talked about defunding the police after the George Floyd situation. It really hurt, I think, the Democrats. Now, what was your suggestion regarding ICE?
Well, no, it's the same thing with ICE. I mean, I understand the personal passion that these ICE agents are not following the Constitution, right? That we understand. And I know the instinct is, well, just get rid of this entire agency. Responding to lawlessness with a suggestion of lawlessness is not a good idea, right? That's what defund the police. And the irony to defund the police is, I was quoting a memo that this group, Searchlight Institute, which is sort of a bunch of old Harry Reid staffers trying to, frankly, moderate the Democratic Party messaging, trying to push back on some of these progressive groups. They made the point that even in the entire uproar over defund the police, the people that were advocating defunding the police were actually never advocating getting rid of police. What they were advocating for was a reallocation of resources. Hey, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. But they didn't say it, right? Instead, they sloganed it up, and the slogan was misleading, but it's on them, right, for using that slogan. So be careful here, right? The issue with ICE is not the agency. The issue is the recruiting, which is just, and again, have you seen these recruitment videos? Yeah. They are just nutso. Okay, I watch a lot of college football, as many people who follow me know. I love it. And what's been interesting is that DHS ran very market-specific ads trying to recruit ICE agents via local law enforcement. So, for instance, in Seattle, Washington, it would be, "Attention, Seattle law enforcement, would you like to actually do your job?" I mean, it was essentially the message, sort of like, come on, we will stop this invasion. You will be allowed to do your job. Here's $50,000. I mean, incredible money they're throwing at this in order to recruit these agents, depleting the ranks of local law enforcement who are struggling with police officer recruiting, right? This is a classic where the federal government is making cities unsafe with their tactics here. But the recruiting videos they use is getting a certain type of person to sign up.
Right.
And that's the problem.
Well, so our slogan should be what? Reform ICE?
Reform
Okay.
and repair,
Reform
right?
and
Some
repair.
form of that. Reform and repair. Look, the mistake Democrats made about immigration in the first place is when they wanted to decriminalize it, right? Like, it is, I understand you're upset about the extreme behavior of immigration enforcement at the moment, but the response, this is why the middle is, went in the direction that it did, right? These folks, it goes back to a lot of issues that Democrats have struggled in confronting Trump with, which is the public likes the goal Trump states, but they don't like his tactics.
Yeah.
And I think you got to focus on the tactics and you got to focus on the leadership rather than abolishing ICE. Now, it's possible they're going to have to rename this agency, right? The toxicity, the brand depletement, right? This is like why Philip Morris had to change its name, right? When smoking became so unpopular. It's now some ridiculous made-up word, I think, Altria, right? But, guess what? Nobody remembers Philip Morris's name anymore, right? So I don't doubt that eventually this agency's name's probably going to have to change. It is going to be such an unpopular agency in the United States. But we still need immigration and customs enforcement, but we need agents that follow the Constitution.
So since we saw you were that we're getting closer and closer to the midterms, and you wrote a piece in which you said instability is the story of the midterm elections. What does that mean, Chuck Todd?
Well, look, we have, and I had my my pal Ian Bremer on to talk about the foreign policy world, but I also have deemed 2026 the year we're living dangerously, and I say it not with the tongue in cheek or being humorous. We have a single individual who's very unpredictable, and it is simultaneously potentially start a war with Europe, stumble us into a war somewhere that none of us want to be a part of, and at the same time threaten an insurrection act in Minnesota, right? Like, he is the instability. And on any given day, it's like, why do we all have this extra level of anxiety? It is because we don't know what's coming next. And who knows if he knows what's coming next. But I fear that he is in a YOLO mindset. You only live once mindset. And if you look at the tactical ease with which we got Maduro, I think that is only going to make him, we want our political leaders, I want them when they think about doing something that's destabilizing or shocking, that the first question they ask, why should we do it? And I fear he's always going to be asking, well, why not? Let's try it.
So does that mean Iran and Greenland are happening by the end of the weekend?
Here's the thing. The rational part of my brain says, well, that's crazy. But how do you rule it out? Would you? And you can't. And if you're the Danes, if you're NATO nations, I mean, the fact of the matter is, I don't think enough has been made of Trump's Truth Social tweet yesterday, which basically said to NATO, it's a mighty fine multilateral organization you have there. Be ashamed to lose it. He basically has said, if you don't give us Greenland, we're not going to fund NATO.
Yeah. Mob boss language, right?
Well, that's what it's also
it's the only way to understand him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think your point about Venezuela and the success in a very limited, focused fashion is that also a lot of people are speculating that as his numbers decline, this is the reaction of a madman who has it's got these playthings urged on by the Hexes, the Millers, and all these other sort of warmongering lunatics. They are.
Or you have folks with their own agendas. And I say this because, look, Venezuela happened because Marco Rubio for the last 7 years has been working Trump.
Exactly right.
He's been the Latin American whisperer. This is Marco Rubio's.
And he dangled oil in front of him, essentially.
That's right. He knew how to move them, right? And that's the scary thing is how many rogue agents inside the West Wing have their own goals in mind, own ways. Maybe they want to grift the federal tax dollars, and they know how to push Trump's buttons to get Trump to do what they ask for. Hey, there's oil there. If Cuba had oil, we'd already have done it, right? If Haiti, I look at, we're supposedly he's interested in the Western Hemisphere. Well, I'd like him to actually take a little interest in what's happening in Haiti. But as you know, Haiti doesn't have any oil.
Well, I think you made the point, or if I know I read it or heard it somewhere, where the people that he's having over to Mar-a-Lago are a lot of people from Florida whose families came from Venezuela and Cuba. Rubio, talk about that.
And I say this, Marjorie. I say this to somebody. I have that confirmation bias. I grew up in Miami. I have plenty of friends who are sons and daughters of Cuban exiles. You can't help but take on I'm with them in spirit with their fight with Cuba, okay? And I'm with them in spirit on that. So it is an intoxicating atmosphere there. These are very sort of fiery and patriotic folks, right? And there's a righteousness to their fight. So you can get sort of you do sort of get consumed by it when you live down there. And I say this not it just is. If Mar-a-Lago were in California, we never would have gone into Venezuela, right? Because Rubio worked him hard for his own motivation. He's brought, and this is classic Trump, right? There are some living survivors of the Bay of Pigs fiasco back in the early 60s, which was this failed attempt to overthrow Castro back in the day. And Kennedy pulled back, and of course, the rest is history. Cubans stopped supporting Democrats all because of that moment, right? That was the moment, nothing else, right? That was the moment that the Cuban community became Republican. And, Rubio has brought those Bay of Pigs veterans to get to know Trump. And Trump loves those old guys, telling those war stories and stuff. So he's going to go to Cuba. And the thing is, none of us know what we're unleashing here.
Yeah.
What we're unleashing in Latin America, right? The last 2 times we've had presidents muck around in Latin American political leadership, it has led to more anti-Americanism, not less.
And as we know from our time yesterday with Atul Gawande, who's got an Academy Award-winning film about
nominated
for he went back to Kenya and South Sudan talking about what's happened since USAID, which he used to run, took over. We played a clip of Rubio lying and saying not a single child has died in his watch, and the film actually documents the starvation of all these children. And
as many as 600,000 deaths already, according to that researcher at BU.
So he's proven, no matter what Susie Wiles says, to have no scruples and principles really at all. And Filkins, the great reporter for the New Yorker, has got a whole profile of him and then talking about how it's just power. It's just power, power, power. And he's a very smart guy.
You're referring to Rubio, you
yes.
mean, right? I am. I also think he's probably the one person that will keep NATO from fracturing.
I hope so.
He is kept,
I hope so.
And here's the thing. It's sort of like, look, you can't, when people always ask me are there any guardrails left in the administration? And it's like, well, look, in their own way, both Scott Bessent and Marco Rubio are minimalist guardrailers, okay? Meaning there is a few places that I think that that in their own way, they've kept Trump from absolutely doing the worst possible action, right? And for instance, Trump hasn't walked away from Ukraine yet. And I know it looks like he may at any given day, but the fact that he hasn't is because of Rubio. So, he is who he is, and Rubio has decided to use that access that he has to pursue his own political goals. And The big joke in Miami now is the Cuban Power Index, right? We've got a national title game featuring perhaps the first ever Cuban American football coach to win a national title in Mario Cristobal, or a Cuban Heisman Trophy winner leading the Indiana, or you have Marco Rubio, who got an American president to do something that no Cuban son of Cuban exiles has gotten an American president to do since Eisenhower, right? So here we are, the Cuban Power Index. Rubio and Fernando Mendoza are a close number one. Poor Mario Cristobal's number three, but there are going to be more streets named after Marco Rubio in South Florida.
Wait till he's president
before.
of Cuba. Hey, we only have a minute left, and we really sought your advice on an issue that Marjorie and I are grappling with. When was the last time, Chuck, you had a piece of broccoli, a piece of chicken, a corn tortilla, and one other thing for dinner?
You know
when did you do that last?
Yeah.
This is a suggestion by
What'd
the
she
Agriculture Secretary. Yeah, go ahead.
She forgot the most, when I was going to school, we were told that ketchup was a vegetable.
That's right.
Ronald Reagan,
so
thank
she
you.
forgot that, right? So what she could have, I guess that's the other stuff. Do a squirt,
a
dollop of that, a dollop of that, and then she also let them eat cake. She needs to add that to.
Well, that could be the other thing. One other thing. We're going to talk about
That's a
Brooke
good
Rollins
one.
in a minute. Hey, Chuck, it's good to see you. In all seriousness, we really want to connect when you're here in February.
I'd love to. That's why I said
that'd
it
be
out
fun.
loud.
Great.
I forced it on air, so all your listeners know we have to get together now.
We'll make it happen. Good to see you, Chuck. Be well.
Thank you very
All right,
much,
guys.
Chuck Todd. We've been speaking with political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press and host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere. He's also the host of the Chuck Toddcast. You can find the ChuckToddcast.com. Find it at thechucktoddcast.com. That's thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com at the Chuck Toddcast. Okay, up next, we're going to talk about that single piece of broccoli and piece of chicken and maybe an M&M on the side. Is that how you're going to solve your economic problems if things are a little tight now in the United States of America? How's the economy feeling for you? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPN, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the Democratic U.S. representative for South Carolina's 6th District and longtime leader in the House, joins us to talk about his new book, The First Eight, a personal history of the pioneering black congressmen who shaped a nation. Clyburn reflects on South Carolina's Reconstruction-era black lawmakers whose service helped redefine American democracy and why their stories matter still. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, fueled by cutting-edge research and aided by the latest technology, professionals can choose from more than 90 in-person and online courses offered throughout the year. Executive.mit.edu. And Fixed Dental, offering permanent teeth-on implants, customized in their laboratory, enabling their doctors and technicians to oversee every aspect of the smile design. Learn more about all the treatments offered at Fixed at fixeddental.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow at the library, Jill Abramson, who used to run the New York Times. Shannon O'Brien is back running the Cannabis Control Commission. Congressman Keating and live music. Today, a reality check on the economy. We're bringing our attention to Trump's speech at the Detroit Economic Club, definitely, completely, fully not discussing, even though we will later, the man who called him a pedophile protector.
Not talking about this.
Yeah, we're not. Here's Trump earlier this week.
The strongest and fastest economic turnaround in our country's history. It's really been historic. There's never been, we've got $18 trillion being invested in our country. The most of any country ever was 3. We're at 18. There's never been anything like this. You are so lucky I allow you into this room to even be with me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The fake news will say Donald Trump thinks he's hot stuff. Right now, I'm feeling pretty good, though, I will say.
I will say a CNN fact check finds that $18 trillion investment, which is fabulous, is completely and totally made up.
Yeah.
The White House is counting vague investment. Well, it doesn't matter. It's totally made up. But that's just one fact of many, and nobody knows their own economic status better than themselves. You know how much groceries cost. You know how hard it is to get ahead, get a new job, buy a house, get new health insurance, pay for childcare. So this is our, quarterly, every 2 months, every 1 month, economic check-in at 877-301-8970. Despite how Trump is describing it, how is the economy treating you? And have you had to change any of your behaviors as a result of the not terribly strong personal economy? By the way, can I just add a few more things? Daniel Dale, who's the fact checker we don't want to dwell on what Trump said. We'll get it out of the way, and then we can talk about you. Here's his response to every assertion in that one speech. Dale writes, inflation hasn't stopped. Consumer prices are up, not down. Grocery prices are rising, not starting to fall rapidly. U.S. businesses and consumers, not China, pay U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. It's impossible to reduce prescription drug prices by thousands of percentage points. This is just one speech Trump has given, and it seems to me that it's almost like a death wish, Marjorie. Even if you're not going to show empathy for people who are having a tough time with the economy, you don't brag about how great it is. It's almost like he wants to lose these people. I know what it is. He can't ever admit anything is not perfect under him. But we're curious to hear, a few months since we did this last, how the economy is treating you.
It's interesting, too, that he gets fact-checked on these things. Like he's always talking about how he solved 8 wars, and that's not true. In some of the countries, there was not even a scuffle, never mind a war. And he said a few weeks ago that gas prices were under $2 in many places, and that was fact-checked. And there is no state with an average gas price below $2. There might be some place that have them some special deal at a certain gas company for a while. But he gets fact-checked, and he just keeps saying these things over and over again. It's sort of, so I don't know if he thinks about it or if he just thinks people just believe him no matter what he says, or he doesn't care. I mean, it's kind of odd if you get caught in a lie that you keep repeating it over and over again, unless it's that theory that if you tell the lie long enough, people believe it.
Well, the Roy Cohn thing. Well, it's my theory, which I've only been saying for years, is he has serious mental illness. And I think that causes part of it. Now, let me just say, while we are totally sympathetic to the plight of the average American in terms of the economy, we mentioned this briefly to Chuck as he was leaving. We do think that there's a little bit too much whining. And the response to the whining was from the Agriculture Secretary, the great Brooke Rollins, yesterday on News Nation, talking about the meals she says Americans can eat in these tough times under the new nutrition guidelines. Here is Secretary Rollins.
We've run over 1,000 simulations. It can cost around $3 a meal for a piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, corn tortilla, and one other thing. And so there is a way to do this that actually will save the average American consumer money.
I think the key thing is the one other thing.
Doesn't that sound delicious?
So if, in addition to you telling us about your own economic situation, how the economy is treating you, we want to know how many of you would be excited by a piece of chicken. What is a piece of broccoli?
I think it might be one floret.
One floret.
Whatever you call them.
A corn tortilla, and we should be clear, nothing on it.
No cheese is mentioned. No cheese, Jim.
Can't afford cheese. And the best part is, and one other thing, remember, who's the guy from Texas who forgot what the third department he wanted to eliminate?
Perry, was it Perry?
Perry, and Mitt Romney
Governor
had to
Perry?
tell him what the in the presidential
Department
debate,
of Education.
Whatever
he was
going to
get rid of 3 departments, and he forgot which.
I thought it was the Energy Department, which he ended up running.
The Energy Department.
Yeah, he ended up running. In any case, 877-301-8970. In addition to your economic state, tell us how appetizing a piece of chicken, a broccoli floret, a corn tortilla with nothing on it, and one other thing sounds to you.
The one other thing is had a lot of fun for people online, talking about speculating about what the one other thing could be.
What could it be?
Well, it could be 3 peas.
Could be.
Not 20 peas, 3 peas. It could be, in one picture of a plate I read about, a single red M&M, Jim. That was it.
That's plenty. It's one other thing.
So think about that.
877
piece of chicken.
301-8970.
And what about the ketchup or the whatever you want to put? What would you put on chicken? I you might like to put some nice lemon.
Unfortunately, you can't afford to put
chicken.
anything on chicken. That's the point. Let's go to Chuck and Brighton. You were first. We're talking about the state of the economy for real people, not in Donald Trump's mind. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, guys. I'm a pescatarian, so I don't eat chicken.
Well, you're really in trouble. Go ahead.
So I wrote down some thoughts, but I'm actually going to, fast forward because I feel like it will take too long. I wanted to touch on what seems like an abdication of leadership by Chuck Schumer in meeting the moment against Trumpism. Mm-hmm. It's like in response to the Venezuela crisis, he goes and meets with Marco Rubio and hugs him on camera. I'm not saying he should be flipping him off like Donald Trump does the auto workers.
Yeah.
But, it's like, what are you doing? And then in response to
before
Renee
you
Goody,
we don't have time.
Please.
Never mind. Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, and in response to Renee Good, murder, Chuck Schumer says not the problem is that she was murdered on the street, but that ICE is not working with local law enforcement. So my point being is that we need a clear message for the future of the party, and that was laid out by Elizabeth Warren, and it's being seen in action by Mamdani in New York. We're seeing what can actually happen.
Well, I have to say, we gotta go. But let me just say that Chuck Schumer is not just unpopular with you, but with most of his own party.
Gone.
In any case, Chuck, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here, but we're going to take more of your calls and texts at 877-301-8970. And if you want to be economical in this economy, you got the chicken, one piece of chicken, you got the one broccoli flowerette, you got the corn tortilla, and you got one more thing. What would your one more thing be? We'll be right back.
In Kenya, most of the cars on the road are used imports that run on gas. A new company hopes to change that by producing EVs domestically.
All my life, I've been watching documentaries on vehicles being manufactured out there. One question that always came into my mind, are we able to do this here in Kenya?
That story plus the top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Symphony Orchestra. This month, the E Pluribus Unum Festival explores American music, history, and ideals through performances and in-depth conversations at Symphony Hall and around Greater Boston. BSO.org. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie, Egan, and Jim Browdy streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, back at the library, live music. Friday, Jill Abramson used to run the New York Times. Shannon O'Brien, head of the Cannabis Control Commission. Congressman Keating. Sue O'Connell. If you're just tuning in, we started by starting to list the untruths. I'm being really generous that Trump spoke about at that economic forum in Detroit. But much more importantly, we want to talk about how the economy is treating you and how you're reacting to the fact that it's not so good. And furthermore, we were so taken by the generous offer of the Secretary of Agriculture with that chicken. Whatever the hell it was, chicken, broccoli, tortilla, and one other thing. We wanted your thoughts about whether that worked. Here's an anonymous texter saying a dollop of liverwurst, roasted vegetables, singular, and a side pickle. Now that is what Brooke Rollins should have mentioned.
Jamie says, this sounds like my 6-year-old kid negotiating to have dessert after dinner. I'll eat one broccoli, one piece of chicken, one other thing, thinking to have some ice cream.
By the way, it's further proof, in a moment of total seriousness, the tin eardom of this administration, not only talking about Trump lying about everything about the economy, but to make that kind of suggestion when people are in such tough straits. Peter in Longmeadow, hi.
Hi. We've definitely felt the economic crunch as both of us being teachers here in our town. We've always kind of lived right on the edge to stay with our lifestyle that we like to live, and I've always been under the premise though of that we do live a nice life, and that I really don't complain too much, but it's not easy. And my wife, and as a full-time teacher, also has a full-time real estate license that she just picked up a few years ago to pay for colleges and things, every daily living. And it's not getting any better. And I think the as you just alluded to, the most frustrating thing for us when we watch the news or we watch whatever it is, we listen to, people speaking about it. It's so dismissive and it's just so wrapped up in lies that it's just this. It becomes this game, and so I've kind of punched out. I've checked out because it becomes so frustrating that it starts to affect you on a more cellular level, and I can't do that anymore.
I think that's a wonderful
that's a great point.
Peter.
I think there's a lot of people who feel. In fairness, though, Biden was always talking about saying that the unemployment rate is down.
He was as 10-year as Trump on this thing.
He was really bad about it. I think it really, really hurt him to keep telling everybody things are great when they're not. They're not great.
I mean, it's Peter. Thanks for the call. This is normal human relationships, not just about leadership. Is show a little empathy. I mean, even if you say rhetorically, we're working hard and things are getting better, we're turning the corner. I mean, don't lie about how great things are when people know the reality on the ground. I mean, it's just not real.
John in Westford is texting, it took Biden 4 years to kill the economy, give Trump more than a year. It's starting to get better. But I would argue back, John, that I don't feel he's making an effort. He's going after Greenland. He's going after Iran. He's shut down. People's electricity prices are through the roof. We're going to talk about this later with Bill McKibben. He shut down all these green energy, not only that would help us eventually have much lower electricity costs, but jobs. So I don't know. He doesn't seem to be focused on this at all. He's talking with Elizabeth Warren about cutting credit card rates, but you said that will not wind up working.
No, well, first of all, I think it'd be fabulous. I think there should be some cap. Cutting them at 10%. Elizabeth Warren knows a little bit more about the economy than I do. There is a problem. I mean, clearly they're profiteering on this, but some cushion's got to be there because they're not going to give credit cards to high-risk people. How about, here's an anonymous texter, how about one piece of chicken, a broccoli floret, a tortilla, and a Big Mac? So... Don,
how much are Big Macs now?
What?
I think they're way over $3, aren't they? Are they $6 or something?
Dan
like
in
that?
Munson, welcome to the show. Hi, Dan. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate
it. The question was, what's changed for me?
Yeah.
I was planning on. So I'm a homeowner, a regular person, a regular job, but I'm a car enthusiast. So I was going to treat myself to an automotive lift for my garage. So a couple of years ago, I did the research. I check the sizes, check the measurements, talk to the concrete guys, plan to have this thing, be able to support itself. I could give you the name of the lift if you want. But at any rate, it was hovering around $2,000 to buy this thing. So here it is about 18 months later, and I'm ready to buy it. And now it's hovering about $3,200.
Wow.
It's $1,200 more. And it's like, I'm just not going to do this. This isn't something I have to do. I'll wait until, we get a little sanity in our world and the prices go back down. But otherwise, if I'm set on this model and this make, I would have to research again all of the things I did the first time to find something that's a little more palatable in terms of and affordable.
How much does this mean to you?
Tariffs, I would think, right?
Yeah. How much does this mean to you, Dan?
Well, I think it's an illustration for a lot of things that I'm not buying, a lot of big purchase, a big item, big dollar sign things that I'm not buying. I was looking at solar not too long ago, and that's just on hold.
Yeah.
We have a cabin on our property. We were going to do solar. We had I had a quote for it. I had solars lined up. It was a pretty big project. It was about $10,000. We're just not going to do it.
Well, tax credits.
Look at it in 4 years. Maybe we'll look at it and the tax credits, right, are gone.
Yeah.
Dan, thanks for the call.
We get calls all the time from people who have solar panels and solar hot water, and they have a zero electricity bill.
Here is...
not to mention the workers in New Bedford. That really kills me at the wind farm there. We don't know what's going to... keep it going, and they're not going to keep it going. It's... by the way, the Big Mac is $6.72.
Well, unless you buy it on the Turnpike, and it's like $600.72. April in Webster says, my one more thing would be acetaminophen to help ease the overwhelming headache I have whenever someone in the Trump administration speaks. Gina in Mattapan. Hey, Gina, how are you?
I'm good, and yourself? How you doing?
Very well. Thanks for calling.
good. My first time calling.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. What I was telling to you, the person that does your screening, that I went from a 2-paycheck down to 1 paycheck because my husband passed away.
Sorry to hear
So
that.
trying to manage funds you don't know that you're going to need because my husband took care of a lot of stuff. So it's just not right. You know, for them to continue to say that everything's all right, I don't know what they're using to say it. So, like I was telling the person that I used to buy, I would buy beef bacon. It was $7.90 now. It's $11.99.
Yeah, meat has gone way up.
Yeah, but it's still. How do you? And I have to buy gas, oil. Oil's expensive. I'm spending $365 a month for oil.
How stressful is all this? Obviously, the loss of your husband. Beyond, how stressful is just getting by every day been for you, Gina?
It's a lot because when you have 2 incomes, you don't have to. There's certain things you don't think about. You know, like he would go shopping and he would buy all the paper goods and all the stuff that he bought. Now I have to buy on 1 paycheck.
Well, Gina, first, we're really sorry for your loss, and 2, we hope this is not your only call. We hope you call us again soon, and we wish you good things, Gina. Thanks so much for the call.
Well, here's a retiree who says our taxes are up, health insurance is up, groceries are up, electricity up, natural gas up, home repair costs up, fixed income is fixed. And Bill from Bridgewater says, I think the 4th thing she left out of that food list was arsenic. I think if you've eaten that meal once or twice, you're not going to want to ever eat again, because you won't be there to eat anything.
Gary in the car, welcome. Thanks for the call. Hi.
How you doing, Jim?
Good.
I'm doing fine. I really love what Mr. Trump has done in the first period of this year, recovering everything and making it so much better than when we had the dead man in the office for 4 years. And inflation was 25% under Biden.
Well, wasn't at the end? Excuse me,
well.
Gary. At the end, it was low single digits.
Yeah, I think it was down to 2 or 3.
Yeah, but go ahead.
End. I don't think it was ever 25 either, Gary. But what is it?
High, no, it was high in the middle. It wasn't 25. Yeah.
What is it that you like? I'm always interested when Trump people call. What is it that you like that he's done?
Positive attitude, and he's bringing back the power of the United States of America. You know, we were trying to appease all these pissant countries about giving them free food and money, but it didn't happen. They hate us.
Well, you know, Gary, were you listening yesterday when Dr. Gawande was on, or no?
I spent 30 years in this service, okay? I've been all over the world. And every country I've been stationed in, they like America. All these other countries hate us.
Which are the other countries?
Money anyway.
Which other countries we're talking about? Like what country?
Turkey, Saudi Arabia.
No. What countries hate us?
South Korea.
I think he's listening to the ones that hate us.
No, I don't think he is.
You name it.
Oh.
No, I don't think he is.
There's 180 of them that hate us.
I got it. Gary, thank you for your call. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number. This has nothing to do with anything, but obviously it's important. Anonymous texter just saw the nice GBH billboard on the turnpike. Of course, Jim is on the top, so he can look down smugly upon us from the highest point. Marjorie, you're beautiful, as always. Well, thank you for that, anonymous
Thank you very
texter.
much for that.
I
You can
appreciate
text
it.
anytime.
Here's Dano and Dudley. Chicken, tortilla, broccoli, and whiskey. Lots of whiskey. I mean, it really, in all seriousness, do you say to yourself, I assume when Brooke Rollins said that she had thought about it before, I mean, she prepared for this thing because people are talking about the unaffordability of America. Can you imagine those words crossing your mouth and then saying at the end, because she couldn't think of whatever the other thing was, and one other thing? One other thing.
I think she should have said 2 pieces of chicken instead of 1 piece of chicken.
Or 3 florets.
Or 3 florets instead of 1 piece.
Let me tell
of
you
broccoli.
something. I happen to love tortillas.
I guess you have to cook the, what do you call it, crown of broccoli or head of broccoli or something?
Same thing, yeah.
So I guess you have to take a little floret off, and on Monday you cook Monday you cook the 1 floret, and Tuesday you cook the 2nd floret, and Wednesday the broccoli would probably be bad, so you have to get another head of broccoli. Generally, they don't sell them 1 floret at a time.
No, but let me tell you what my experience has been. If you overcook the broccoli floret, so it's very mushy, you can spread it on the tortilla because you got nothing else to put on that baby. baby. So you spread it across the tortilla and then pop the tortilla in.
Yeah, she said no salsa, I guess. You can't afford the salsa.
Here's Sam in Rhode Island before we get back to the calls. Cost of living is terrible, and a dual-income household can't afford a house. A case of cat food was $22 before COVID. Now it's $60?
Wow.
I'm spending just $2,000 just on cat food a year. My medical insurance is going up. We know what happens with the Obamacare subsidies. That's me. The stress is not a great way to live, and definitely not the great American dream of yesterday. I want to emphasize...
the layabout cat has to get a job, Jim.
Can I speak to the stress thing? As I just asked Gina from Mattapan when she called. We don't factor that. I know because it's not quantifiable. We talk about dollars and cents, is how much gas costs, is how much it would cost to be affordable. Same with groceries, all that sort of stuff, electricity. The stress that is caused by the inability to afford to live a decent life and take care of your kids is immense. And as I say, it's unquantifiable, so we ignore it. But can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine?
No. Well, I'm very lucky now. I have a good job. But I remember it when I was young. You'd write a check to the gas company. In those days, you used to write checks, and I'd forget to sign my name. So, of course, they couldn't.
I remember those days.
They couldn't cash the check. And then
Shocking you would do that.
They couldn't shut me off because it was supposedly a mistake that I forgot to sign my name. Or you call and you plead. You plead with them to help you.
Here's Chris
horrible.
from Bellingham. A piece of chicken, a piece of broccoli, a tortilla, and a presidential impeachment. It's a hell of a meal. It's one other thing. Barb in Narragansett. Hey there.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
How do you tell Trump is lying?
How?
We know the answer. His mouth is moving.
His lips are moving.
Thank you. It's an old joke, but always a good one.
It used to be reserved for junkies, but it's now for the President of the United States.
What else you got, Barbara?
I'm a single retired woman, and I spent $78 on a bag of groceries yesterday, and that wasn't even replete with numerous meals to be had from it. It was basically restocking kind of thing.
What would that $78 bag roughly have cost you, I don't know, a year ago or whatever?
I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
But I will take you back to the 20th century when I was a happy inhabitant of the 20th century. I was a single-head household, and I had $25 in my wallet to shop for myself and my two daughters. And that's what I had, and I was able to do that. And it cost me $400 a year for heat and hot water. My heating assistance grant this year filled my tank once in January, and that's it for my heating assistant grant. I have something of a cushion, but there are many people who do not, and I don't know how people are feeding families with kids. It's just ridiculous, the cost of basic necessities of life.
Well, we know, and also food. I mean, the Narragansett, that's where you're from. The Narragansett isn't beer, that's what made me think of it. The SNAP cuts for a lot of low and moderate income people, a huge percentage of whom are working, is another nightmare. Barb, thanks for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Listen to this. This is from Pamela. We need to re-side our 70-year-old house for new siding and 6 new windows. We got estimates of $60,000, $75,000, and $101,000. It's a 2,200 square cape, not a McMansion. Don't let Trump supporters get away with saying tariffs are good. Those are the kind of things where you really do see the impact of the tariffs.
You know what's also incredible is that Trump continues to say that these other nations are paying the tariffs, which you don't really need to be an economist, neither of which of us are, to understand who pays the tariffs. I mean, we're paying the damn tariffs.
Here's a good one. He says there's a lot of complaining about this administration, which they deserve. This is David. What I want to know is, what are the Democrats doing now to win in the midterms and the general election? Seems like crickets from the Democratic Party. No leader. We heard the previous caller complaining about Chuck Schumer, and I think he's absolutely right. No leader other than Gavin Newsom, and since he's from California, it'd be a tough sell across the United States. We are leaderless.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, yeah?
I don't agree with that. First of all,
who's leading?
Well, I don't know. I don't know who the individual is. They're saying the right things. I mean, for example, again, is there a concrete concrete plan to make your life tremendously better? Well, I would say relentlessly stating every day, and I've been very critical of Democrats and their message. This is not sycophancy. When you talk about the cost of whatever happened in Venezuela or the cost of what it would take to invade Greenland and how those dollars could be spent, for example, on the Obamacare subsidies for the 24 million people, I think 300 to 400,000 of whom are in Massachusetts, who are at risk if they haven't already lost their Obamacare subsidy. That's money that could be spent here rather than being spent somewhere else, which was one of the major themes of Trump's candidacy. America first. Well, that's not America first. Nobody who knows anything thinks we have some great drug risk from fentanyl coming from Venezuela. It's about his obsession with oil. So maybe, David, they aren't coming up with a precise level of plans that you and most of us would like to hear, but I think they're going in the right direction, and they sure as hell are not doing happy talk to the American people like Trump and his minions.
And obviously, we've mentioned the efforts to extend the Obamacare subsidies for 3 years, which seems not to be happening at the moment.
Every Democrat, to my knowledge, I think every Democrat in the House, 17 Republicans voted for it. Is that a concrete plan? I mean, that to me, a 3-year extension of the subsidies is a very concrete action by the Democrats. I think they've been in the wilderness for years, clueless, not telling the truth about Biden until it was too late, even though I think Biden had a lot of wonderful things in his presidency, but obviously stayed too long at the fair. I think they're doing better than they have in quite a while, actually.
Oh, an anonymous texter says, not to worry, we're all going to get a $5,000 DOGE check.
Yeah, what happened to that, by the way?
We're much too negative.
What happened to that, by the way?
I don't know.
And weren't we getting another check off the tariffs or something?
We're supposed to get a tariff check. I don't know. What happened to the baby checks? If people gotten the baby checks?
I don't know. Do you remember it was that? Wasn't there a private guy and his wife appeared at a press conference at the? Can you let us know, you guys in there? What happened? They had that announcement that they were going to do those baby. I was going to say baby formula things. Well, whatever it was, a check. Yeah, the Dells, as in the computer family.
Yeah,
that's right.
Are they going to fund those checks?
I don't know what happened
baby
to it.
checks? I don't know.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Jill thinks, Jim, I hadn't heard this. Grocery bags have gotten smaller. The grocers know that we're paying more for less.
Well,
have you noticed they've shrunk? Shrinkflation of the grocery bags?
Well, not grocery bags, but
it's a conspiracy.
No, cereal boxes.
A
lot of the products that we're used to buying, everybody knows this, as you said, shrinkflation. The prices have stayed the same. That's the scam. But the quantity of food in the box or the can or the whatever is dramatically different.
Of cereal, and you open it up and it's like half empty and you haven't even opened it. That's a very good point.
Can I also, one of the other things, which, here's drug prices are a big issue. Here's Trump's math on lowering drug prices. You've heard it, but here it is again.
We're standing up to special interests and slashing prescription drug prices by 300, 400, 500, and even 600% and more.
Well, that actually it's good that we're slashing it by 600% or more. It's impossible, but we are slashing them by lots of things. Let me tell you something. The American people, in my opinion, if Trump, because he is a great performer, if Trump had it in him, which he unfortunately does not, or if you want him to disappear ultimately, it's at least his majority to disappear. It's good that he doesn't. If he showed 1 ounce of empathy for people who are suffering economically, I think he'd unfairly, but he'd regain. What are you laughing about?
I'm just saying, this person says if we eat like Brooke Rollins wants us to, then nobody has to worry about GLP drugs, the weight loss drugs anymore.
That's a very good point. Here's another one. Anonymous texter, $140,000 a year household, solidly lower middle class, 2 kids, 1 in college, capital letters, no vacations, no eating out.
Yeah.
Still can't get ahead. $140,000.
Which used to be sitting pretty in Massachusetts, and now doesn't get you very far.
In any case.
Okay, things are going well, Jim. But I think you have to just remember that. A piece of chicken. A piece of broccoli. A corn tortilla.
1 corn tortilla.
And one more thing.
One other thing.
One other thing. You'll be all set.
One other thing.
We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you very much for tuning in, but make sure to tune into the fabulous 413 this afternoon at 3. We're going to keep going in Boston. After the noon news, we're going to talk to former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, this incredible story about a woman who tried to get a job at ICE and all the verification of her qualifications they did not do. I'm Marjorie Egan. You're Jim Browdy. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Brightbound. It's never too early to start thinking about what comes next, and Brightbound helps students from middle school through high school discover rewarding careers. Learn more at BRITEbound.org. In a new series, explore the causes, impacts, and solutions of climate change through the stories of people who remind us of the beauty of our world. Watch Climate California tomorrow at 6:30 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR. We'll start the noon hour with former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral on mass resignations at the Department of Justice over Minnesota and Trump's pardons, and the incredible story of a woman and how she was recruited into ICE.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Amherst College's Ilan Stavans and what Latino voters are making of Trump's Venezuela takeover, plus the lengths American citizens are going to protect their undocumented parents, including joining the military. All that, plus our soon-to-be sunsetted Two More Things segment, next on the second hour at BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump will soon be meeting with Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, but he tells Reuters they'll talk basics. In the aftermath of the U.S. military's January 3rd arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, the Trump administration opted to support the existing government led by Maduro's deputy, Delcy Rodriguez, instead of Machado, whose party is widely believed to have won the 2024 presidential election. Trump suggested Machado lacked the authority to govern. Machado recently emerged from hiding to accept the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, something Trump says he should be receiving. Controversially, Machado offered to share hers. In his first term, President Trump wanted to keep the U.S. out of foreign conflicts. This time, Trump keeps turning to the military and threatening to use force. Here's NPR's Greg Myrie.
In the past year, President Trump has ordered airstrikes against 4 countries in the Middle East, 2 countries in Africa, and he's ousted the leader of Venezuela. Now he's talking about further action against Iran and possibly claiming Greenland. Michael McFaul is a former U.S. ambassador to Russia.
Are these military interventions enhancing our security and our prosperity and our values? And in my estimation, they are not.
So far, Trump has relied on airstrikes that can be launched and halted on short notice. He remains reluctant to send ground troops on open-ended missions. But these frequent operations are putting both U.S. friends and foes on edge. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
The president's threatening to invoke the Rarely Used Insurrection Act to deploy troops to Minneapolis. The city has witnessed a surge in immigration and customs enforcement agents in recent weeks. Last week, an ICE agent shot and killed a white 37-year-old mother of 3. Encounters the subject of multiple investigations. And yesterday, a federal officer shot and wounded a Venezuelan immigrant. The man was accused of resisting arrest. Today is the last day of open enrollment for healthcare.gov, the Affordable Care Act marketplace. This year, premiums are way up, and Congress is still deciding whether or not to act. Here's NPR's Helena Simmons-Duffin.
January 15th is the last day to sign up for coverage during open enrollment in the federal marketplace. Some state-based marketplaces like California, D.C., and New Jersey have extended the deadline until the end of January. Premium costs are double on average because the federal government is putting much less money into subsidies this year. A bipartisan group of senators is working on a deal to bring the enhanced subsidies back, but they weren't able to do that before the end of open enrollment. Government data shows signups for ACA plans are down for the first time in 5 years. 22.8 million people have picked a plan or auto-renewed so far. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. As America prepares to celebrate Martin Luther King Day, visitors to national parks will no longer enjoy free admission. The Trump administration removed free admission from MLK Day and Juneteenth as part of what it's calling an effort to make national parks more affordable and accessible. But Alan Spears with the National Parks Conservation Association says this change does the opposite.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sony.
He says there'll still be programming celebrating King's birthday within the National Park Service. We had a little technical difficulty there, no problem. We're learning more about how police caught a Nantucket man who is now accused of trafficking cocaine to the island. 7-year-old Edward Gillespie was arraigned in Barnstable District Court and is being held pending a dangerous hearing scheduled for tomorrow. According to the Boston Globe, a man broke into Gillespie's car in Hyannis with the intention of stealing the car, checked the trunk for valuables, and that's where he found a package of cocaine. Unsure of what to do, he called the cops. He showed the police the car. They obtained a search warrant to set up a camera to watch it until Gillespie showed up, and then they placed him under arrest. Police did not name the man who tried to steal Gillespie's car. In sports, the Bruins host the Kraken at the Garden tonight. The Celtics take on the Heat in Miami. Partly cloudy, high near 50 today. Light clouds, low 20s overnight. 49 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on hour 2 of BPR. We'll start the noon hour with...
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Sony Pictures Classics, presenting The Choral, a film starring Ralph Fiennes as a choir master in 1916 England, determined to lead a local choral society as war rages. Opens Friday in theaters.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We're going to be joined by Shannon O'Brien. She is been reinstated as the Cannabis Control Commission chair. We're going to talk to you about that. The mayor of Boston will be with us January 20th, and Governor Healy will be with us January 30th, both at the library and both between 12 and 1. Hello again, Jim.
And tomorrow, also, Jill Abramson, former head of the New York Times. Joined on Zoom by Andrea Cabral, former Public Safety Secretary from Massachusetts, former Sheriff of Suffolk County, and a BPR contributor. Hey, Andrea.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey, Andrea. So there has been a lot of concern over the recruitment and the training of these different ICE agents, thousands of, 3,000 of whom are now out in Minnesota. Last night, Erin Burnett on CNN got a chance to interview an independent journalist, Laura Jadid, who applied to work for ICE. And here is what she told Erin Burnett.
There's been skepticism, and I understand why. I could not believe what I was seeing when it all came together. It's very funny that they offered me a job, a lefty journalist with a big internet footprint. What's not as funny is the implications of this, because maybe this was just my application, but possibly it wasn't, which means we don't know who is wearing those masks, carrying those guns in cities across the country.
So tell us about this woman and how she got an offer from ICE.
Yeah, I would encourage anyone and everyone to go to Slate and go to slate.com and read Laura Jadid's story. It really, you kind of think you have to be at a stage in 2026 where nothing makes your jaw drop. And I have been, laboring week over week to stress this point that they are not training people. They are merely taking people off the street and giving them this enormous power as ICE agents. But what Laura Jadid does really takes it to the granular level. She just decided as a journalist that she would go to this recruitment expo in Texas, Immigration and Customs Enforcement Career Expo, look around, see what they were doing, and then sort of just, not on a whim exactly, because she's a journalist. I don't think she does anything on a whim, but wanted to see what would happen if she applied. So she did. And first of all, this career expo was held in an arena that holds 2,500 people. The day that she went, she said if there were 150 people there, that would that was probably a high estimation. It was virtually empty. She didn't have very long to wait. She sat across the table from a relatively disinterested woman who was interviewing her, asked her some basic questions. She thought when she filled out the application that she'd get by on the first, at least the initial screen, because she's a military veteran. She did 2 tours in Afghanistan. And she knew that they were specifically looking for, prior law enforcement, prior military. But she didn't think she'd get much further past that because her internet and social media footprint is so obvious. In any event, she gets through the first part of the screening. She's supposed to fill out a bunch of paperwork that, among other things, authorizes a background check, but is supposed to more fully fill in her resume as well. And there was a drug screen. She's from New York, or she lives in New York. Cannabis is legal in New York. A week or so prior, she had ingested some cannabis. So that should have come up in the drug screen. She filled out none of the paperwork, never took the drug test. Because it was primarily because, in terms of the paperwork, the background paperwork, it was because she didn't even see the email that they sent her telling her that she was moving on to the next round. So she missed the email. She did get the notice about the drug test, didn't take it. The next thing she knows...
Wait. You left out one thing. She also, one of the forms she didn't fill out was about whether or not she'd ever engaged in domestic violence against anybody else. She didn't fill that one out either.
She filled out almost nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing about criminal record, nothing about criminal convictions, none of that stuff. The next thing she knows, she gets a notice that says that she has been accepted. She literally got a job offer. And by the way, while she was at this career expo, she talked to a deportation agent who basically, this is one of the reasons people have to read the story, told her that she might be doing sort of, be behind a desk initially as she sort of learned the ropes, whatever those were. But this deportation agent talked a lot about, really, for lack of a better term, the joy and the ease of being able to brutalize people.
Yeah.
There was an agent that spoke at the Career Expo to the audience at large, beyond the person who she spoke to personally, who talked about, very excitedly about their new tasers, state-of-the-art tasers, and the pepper spray and the pepper guns, and people get in your way, you can just pop them. I really don't have the words to describe how absolutely catastrophic this is for this country. And these are the people and if they're doing this in Texas, they're doing it everywhere. These are the people that Trump is weaponizing against the American people who object to what he is doing, who protest what he is doing. He has no problem putting people who will maim, hurt, or kill, as long as they're doing it in his defense. I mean, the pardon of the January 6th insurrectionists is all people really need to understand about the lengths to which he will go to protect people that he believes are protecting him. And that is what's happening in this country. And it's the reason that Congress people, Markey and Presley, have filed a bill, which probably won't get very far, to eliminate qualified federal immunity for federal law enforcement officers who violate the rights of the American people, because that's what they're doing on the streets on a daily basis now.
Can you explain what qualified immunity is? We talked a lot about it after the killing of George Floyd, but for people that don't know, what does it mean and who does it protect and how?
Yes, it's not absolute immunity. It's qualified immunity, which basically says that a federal law enforcement official who commits a wrongful act or violates someone's rights is entitled to a certain level of immunity if they did not knowingly violate that person's rights. Now, there are lots of cases that sort of go into what knowingly means versus, done with full knowledge of it. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not it is appropriate. What I'll say about qualified, having been, a state official who enjoyed qualified immunity, and also a person who's able to see it from the other side. Let me say this. I'll talk more about the genesis of qualified immunity, and it was basically a bargain between the American people and the federal government, where based on a presumption of good faith, a rebuttable presumption, but a presumption of good faith on the part of the federal government, the agencies, and the people who work for those agencies, that the people who work for these agencies would be properly recruited, properly vetted in terms of their background, would be properly trained, and would have an infrastructure in place to hold their misconduct, levels of misconduct accountable, hold them accountable for misconduct. That is why qualified immunity remains viable to this day. What you have happening now in the Trump administration, and this goes for all federal agencies, but I would say ICE being the most egregious right now in terms of what we know. I could be wrong. It's probably a bunch of things we don't know that are happening in other agencies, but ICE gets the most publicity just now. That rebuttable presumption we shouldn't even be thinking about that. It's not even a presumption of good faith anymore. They are not properly recruiting, properly training, properly vetting, and then properly holding accountable at levels far lower than when it gets to the point where they're shooting and murdering a woman in broad daylight. So there shouldn't be any immunity for these kinds of acts. And, in terms of knowingly violating someone's rights, the agency itself is not taking any pains to educate the agents they're putting out there as to what constitutes a violation of rights. That's a problem.
Can I ask you, the argument, and I haven't thought about qualified immunity at all, as I say, since after the killing of George Floyd, but if I remember correctly, and please tell me I'm wrong if I am, that the primary argument against this, other than people who say there should be no limits on what law enforcement do, but you worked in law enforcement, is that the good cops, which I don't know if I can say the same about ICE, but the good cops, which I think confidently say are the majority in most places, will be more hesitant to do what they do within the bounds of the law for fear that they're going to get sued. And even if they end up winning, they have to go through all these great travails. Is there any credence to that concern in your estimation, Andrea Cabral?
I think that there's probably some credence to it, but not enough to warrant the wholesale allowance of bad behavior. Mm-hmm. So, like most things in government, right? You can find examples of things to make your argument on either side. That is why I constantly say that good government is about balance and about balancing the potential harm to the public at large and the harm to a system of justice that is supposed to be dispensed equally against whatever chilling effect it might have on a good officer failing to come forward. And throughout the history of law enforcement, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen good officers coming into courtrooms or standing before judges and saying, I was afraid to do the right thing because I was afraid, that something was going to happen. That is the part of the bargain that I've been focusing on, which is it is up to the federal agency to make sure people are knowledgeable, properly trained, properly vetted, and are the best people you can find to wield this amount of power so that you decrease the risk that they ever find themselves in situations like this. And that's why these agencies, up until the Trump administration, were full of watchdogs, inspectors general, and lawyers to whom you could go to get those questions vetted. A full half of why we're seeing what we're seeing is that Trump has removed all of the safeguards that were in place because what he wants is a militarized, untrained, rogue version of these agencies that will do whatever he says, some because they're not trained to do anything else, and others because this is exactly what they want. They know better and are doing it anyway.
Yeah, can I say, before we move on, can I just say, I want to, because I know you agree, Marjorie, this you got to read this piece in Slate, the title of which is How I Got a Job with the Anti-Immigrant Police, and it's Laura, and you spell her last name Jedde, EED.
Yeah,
We're trying to get her on the show,
really,
too.
Pretty horrifying. So, Andrea Cabral, at least 6 prosecutors out in Minnesota have quit because the DOJ wanted them to investigate. The DOJ has pushed Minnesotans, the law enforcement there, or lawyers, out of the investigation of the death of Renee Good. But the DOJ wanted these prosecutors to investigate the wife of the dead woman, and they left over that. And one of them was the chief guy involved in prosecuting from in the Somali community. So it kind of makes you think that they weren't that interested in getting to the bottom of the fraud, since they fired the guy that was the most knowledgeable about it. Or didn't fire, he resigned. Oh, and by the way, after they resigned, within hours, the federal government fired them, taking away their pay and their benefits that they would have been entitled to for weeks after resigning.
Yes. The exodus from a number of federal agencies, I would say, has been massive. And that is because career people, and it's more than a brain drain, it's a morale drain, it is a mission drain, in terms of purposeful mission or original mission. And it's all very, very intentional. I don't want people to think for a second that the Trump administration sees the exodus of people, quality people like this, as a consequence that they're going to have to live with. They don't think of it as a consequence. It's exactly what they want to happen so that these people can be replaced with quislings and foot soldiers and people who are going to do exactly what they're told to do, much like the people he's installed at the top. So when these prosecutors, when he put Harmeet Dillon in charge of the Civil Rights Division, it was well documented by the press at the time. She was not the person to put in charge of that division unless you wanted that division, as it was traditionally known and as it had traditionally operated, to exist anymore. So she was put there to dismantle it. Their problem is that while you can remove bureau chiefs and the heads of divisions, there are rules within the DOJ that do not allow you, except without very good cause, to fire rank and file prosecutors. And the reason for that is to make sure that those people don't do the very thing that the people at the top of the DOJ are doing for Trump, which is anything he says, anytime he says to do it. You want at least your rank and file people to constantly understand that they are to uphold the rule of law, and that is it. Well, if you force people to resign because you do things as egregious as telling them that they have to investigate the very apparent victim of federal misconduct and a federal shooting, a homicide, versus the actual actor, then you can get rid of them without having to run afoul of the rules. They're still going to get sued because taking away someone's pension when they resign, that's not a firing for cause. That's outrageous. But what they want to make clear, they're not doing it because they think they'll win when these prosecutors sue them for this. They're doing it to cow the rest, the ones that they can't get to and that they can't fire. So these are not, by any stretch of the imagination, the first prosecutors at the mid-level and some at the top who've left because they can no longer do the job that they were supposed to do. And a big part of that is that Trump, people can couch it in whatever way they want, but the bottom line is that Trump's foreign policy and domestic policy is racism and self-interest. And there are people in a number of federal agencies who can no longer countenance that. And what's going to happen to this country as a result of having a federal government that is where the only people employed are people who don't have a problem with that, that damage is it's already very incalculable, and it's only going to get worse.
Can we stay on this topic for a minute? First of all, I have nothing but admiration for these people, many of whom have spent their whole careers doing this work in the most dedicated fashion, having the courage to quit over principle. And by the way, you can add people in the Civil Rights Division of the headquarters of the Department of Justice who've quit in the last few days over the pardons and a whole variety of things. I have a however, though. We had this debate, Marjorie, on the show nonstop during the era of Fauci. Should good people stay and make sure that there are at least some decent people in a corrupt administration, or should they leave? Now, here's the other, so I want your opinion on that, but here's the other caveat, or if that's the right word in this setting. When you quit like they did out of principle, again, which I have utmost admiration for, unless you do it in a higher profile fashion, almost nobody knows that you did what you did.
Right.
My argument used to be, and Marjorie and I would debate this all the time with listeners and each other, Fauci should quit. He should take all the public health people with him, and they should have a press conference with 100 of these people on the steps of the whatever, so it makes the evening news. So 2 questions. 1, should they stay? Should they go? And if they go, it's their decision, not mine, but would it be better if they did it in high-profile public fashion?
It's a really, really good question, and I can only answer for myself. I know that I would go, but I people have families to support. People have obligations, and there are people who genuinely believe that they can continue to do good work.
Exactly.
And they believe that right up until the time that it becomes, and that's usually when it's too late, it becomes apparent that they can't.
Or at least stave off the worst of the bad.
And wait it out and then stick around to help build it back. And like I said, I would not advise people one way or the other because I don't know what people's circumstances are. What infuriates me and devastates me beyond measure is that any of these people have to make that decision.
Right.
It is the obligation, the absolute obligation of government to never put people in this position. And the fact that this is where we are in this country is genuinely devastating. And I grieve for the good ones that stay. And I understand why they stay. I personally, I would leave and I would do what you said. I would take every opportunity to call out what I see happening, and I bring along as many people with me as I possibly could, and I'd try to force the press to focus on it all the time, because this is people won't really get this until, like I say, it's already too late, but until something far worse than even what we're seeing now happens, and that's around the corner.
Reportedly, they're bringing a bunch of military lawyers, JAG people out there now because they're running out of prosecutors.
I didn't know that,
yeah.
You mean to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Oh,
I read where one woman, a former JAG officer, said she didn't think that these military lawyers were going to roll over for Trump as fast as they could because a lot of these military people took an oath to the Constitution and not to the president, and they're serious about it. But I thought that was an interesting move.
We only have a minute, Andrea. No, it's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they will pull like-minded people from wherever they can find them, regardless of ability, regardless of competence. Every war that's ever been fought, good, bad, or otherwise, and I don't know if there is such a thing as a good war, has been fought by people who said, I will do what you're asking me to do. Yeah. So I'm not overly surprised by that.
Andrea Cabral, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
You seem semi-calm today. Is that what's that about, by the way?
I don't know. It probably won't last until next week, but I guess I sort of wax and wane so that I maybe I have 1 or 2 shows a month where I don't sound like a raving lunatic.
No, I wasn't saying that, by the way. I as hell was not saying.
I think the range of emotions are raving lunatic to totally depressed. Yeah. I mean, I think this is.
No, you're right.
It's a very, very difficult time for your mental health and your psyche, I think. Very difficult.
Yeah.
So anyway,
good
thank
to see
Andrea.
you, whatever fashion
welcome.
you join us with. Good to see you, Andrea. Bye.
We were speaking with Andrea Cabral, former Public Safety Secretary for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Do you remember, I'm sorry, in terms of people staying, do you remember when Gary Cohn, who was his economic guy?
Yeah.
This is, I think, in the Woodward book. There was, Trump was about to sign something
horrible thing
with an ally. It was South Korea. I don't remember what it was. Cohn waited till Trump left his office, walked into the Oval Office and stole the document and hoped that Trump would forget about it, which he did.
We need more Gary Combs, you know. I don't think J.D. Vance and Miller are going to do it. Anyway, coming up after this quick break, Amherst College Ilan Stavans joins us to discuss Venezuela and U.S. voters and all that. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Congressman Jim Clyburn, the Democratic U.S. representative for South Carolina's 6th District and longtime leader in the House, joins us to talk about his new book, The First Eight, a personal history of the pioneering black congressmen who shaped a nation. Clyburn reflects on South Carolina's Reconstruction-era black lawmakers whose service helped redefine American democracy and why their stories matter still. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the University of Massachusetts Amherst. UMass, the state's flagship public research university, empowers students to be the future in the pursuit of progress for Massachusetts and beyond. More at umass.edu. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to BPR. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, we'll be joined by the former executive editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson. She joins for Press Play. Recently reinstated Cannabis Control Commission Chair Shannon O'Brien. We haven't talked to her in ages.
No.
That's a hell of a story, by the way. And Congressman Bill Keating is going to be on about legislation he's proposing that would make it illegal for the United States to invade another NATO country, obviously Greenland and Denmark and that whole deal. Joined now on Zoom by Ilan Stavans. He's professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College. Also the publisher of Restless Books, an independent nonprofit publisher devoted to championing essential voices from around the world. His latest project is Conversations on Dictionaries, which we totally love. The Universe in a Book. Ilan, good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you?
Good. Well, okay.
Never better. Things are excellent. Thank you for asking.
But thank you so much for joining us. Before we start, I want to play you a little sound. One of our colleagues did an interview with GBH News last week, spoke with Carlina Velasquez, president of the Venezuelan Association of Massachusetts. I'll play the sound and ask what you think of the sound.
This is an opening for freedom and independence, a prosperity for our country and for our people. We would like to go back to our country.
What do you think? Did you think that's a generally held idea?
I think it's a generally held idea, Marjorie, in the United States among Venezuelan exiles. They are very supportive of the Trump effort to capture Maduro and to reorganize the economy. I would assume that there are parts also in Venezuela that are happy with what is happening there, but not everywhere in the country and not everywhere in Latin America. The feeling here is that the sovereignty of the country and the sovereignty of the entire continent have all been put into question, and that we're going back to the 1940s, 50s, 60s, when the United States just thought that it could invade and rearrange the map and be the king of everybody in the so-called banana republics down there.
By the way, a good friend of mine would strangle me if I didn't say the following. As you made clear, not every Venezuelan American shares the perspective of this woman has two parents there who are leading a horrible and difficult life, and they say nothing has changed, which is really, I think, the most important thing in the short run. Has anything changed? We know Maduro is not there. We know his former vice president is now the acting president. The gangs are still there. The whole other infrastructure of Maduro is there. Has anything changed?
Maybe, as Jon Stewart said, what has changed is that there's a new real acting president, and his name is Donald Trump, and there is a real new a business strategy, which is that the United States is selling Venezuelan oil, getting a portion of it, and hoping that the other portion will lift the country back into some kind of economic stability. This is unbelievable. This is the United States taking over that industry and promoting it on the nation's behalf. Again, I think that some Venezuelans are very happy about it, given the option on the other side. But if the United States is just going to come and take over industries all over Latin America, what is Latin America about?
Can I say the guy, we don't give awards on this show, but if we had a Profile and Courage of the Week, you know who the Profile and Courage goes to? The CEO of Exxon. For saying, sitting next to Susie Wiles at a meeting with Trump last week, when Trump said all these oil companies are going to reinvest in Venezuela, he used the word uninvestable, which I've never heard before. And the next day, Trump said, I don't think we're going to include Exxon in whatever happens there. We're talking to Ilan Stavans.
So I know you just got back from Mexico.
Whoa. I'm not done with Venezuela.
Done with Venezuela. Oh, okay.
Trump's meeting with Machado today. The bad news for Trump is the Nobel people said that she could not transfer her Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump. I assume she's going to give it to him anyway, even though obviously it's hers. He said the day after what happened in Venezuela when he did his press thing, she's not respected by the people. What do you expect is going to come of, and by the way, she apparently is the most popular figure in Venezuela. Yeah. What is likely to come out of this meeting in your estimation?
I can't believe the story of the Nobel Prize. I was reading this morning that the Norwegians are themselves just aghast by this idea of transferring the Nobel Prize from one individual to another, and the soft value of their Nobel prize. It's also just fascinating, as a person that loves dictionaries, that Donald Trump restated in one of his messages that he should have gotten this prize and misspelled the word Nobel.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that true?
N-O-B-L-E instead of N-O-B-E-L.
Oh, wow. My God, that is great.
Extraordinary.
Wow.
Machado is widely embraced by Venezuelans, not always in the United States by those in exile, but certainly in many parts of Venezuela. I don't think that Trump really has ever gotten over the idea that he didn't get this. The whole invasion approach was because of this begrudging approach that he has of having lost. And because Obama got it. He always compares himself to Obama.
Yeah, who, by the way, in all fairness, Obama didn't deserve it at that point either.
But
he himself was invading people, countries.
But I have also read, and you know better than I, that one of the problems with Machado coming back is that the military's very powerful there. There's a lot of people that wouldn't be very happy having her come back there. So there could be more unrest in Venezuela because it would be a regime change in that sense of a totally different government. And it might lead to what we tried to do unsuccessfully in other countries, going in and changing Iraq Part 2. I know it's the very different countries, but getting rid of all the Ba'athists.
But they voted for her. Oh, I see what you're saying.
But you get rid of all, they're not going to just lay down their weapons and say, great, glad to see you.
A really good point, Marjorie, but isn't always a regime change? Think Biden going to Trump at absolute transformation of what's happening in a country from diplomatic approaches. I think that people in Venezuela want to have a new start. They voted for her. And my impression is that Trump doesn't want to bring her because she got the Nobel Prize and because they think that a socialist-driven but kind of very bowing government to the United States is going to be far better for Marco Rubio's potential to become the next president of
Cuba, or a president of Cuba in the meantime.
Of Cuba.
By the way, he'll be the first guy who's ever been president of Cuba and president of the United States.
But he has many jobs already, so he can handle it.
I don't know if we talked to you about this, but the Nobel Prize thing doesn't really seem out of character for Donald Trump, because we know that part of the reason anyway that he was so excited about getting rid of Maduro, because he thought Maduro made fun of him with all his dancing and mocking him and all that. So that he wasn't on bended knee to the president as so much of the world is, and so that was the price.
Absolutely, but remember how often Trump himself is dancing on stage, moving his hands and getting all the MAGA enthusiasts trying to do the same.
Okay.
Many left-wing figures in Latin America poke fun of him regularly, and so does he about them. It might be the reason, but it's with Donald Trump, it's just everything is so both simple and very complicated. I don't believe he's a true politician. He's just a bully.
Can I tell you one thing before we leave this subject? You may be an esteemed professor of Latin American and Latino culture, but I got to disagree with you. If she hands him over the medal from the Nobel Prize, she is president of Venezuela 30 seconds later, Ilan Stavans.
I doubt it, Jim. I doubt it. He will use that medal and believe that it was given actually to him, and things are going to remain exactly the same. And you are a very esteemed radio host as well.
I wouldn't go that far. We're talking to Ilan Stavans.
Okay, so you just got back from Mexico City. Jim told me, I wonder how things are down there. Your poor president is such a difficult place. She's trying to charm Trump and thread the needle. And what's going on? What do people think there? What is her path forward?
People in Mexico are very worried about what is going to come next. It's likely that Mexico, not Colombia, not Cuba, is the next in line for some kind of transformation. There is news that the U.S. is so-called negotiating with the Mexican government to embed U.S. forces in order to be able to dismantle fentanyl labs in different parts of the northern states of the country. That would be something that Trump and the administration wants. That would be something, on the other hand, that Claudia Sheinbaum and the Mexicans would feel very uncomfortable about. It's the first step to go against the sovereignty of the country, to cede power to the neighbor to the front. Remember, Marjorie, we have in Mexico a saying that really has stood the test of time. We say, poor Mexico, so far from God and so close to the United States. And it's the United States that really, really manipulates us. So people are very anxious.
When you said at the beginning, I didn't understand exactly what you meant, Ilan. When you said it's not Cuba and Colombia, they're at the top of the list anymore, and maybe Mexico. For what? You mean for our physical presence and their...
For our physical presence, for our invasion. I don't think it's going to be a similar invasion to the one of Cuba, of Trump and his cronies taking Claudia Sheinbaum into New York and put her in prison. But I think it's some kind of strategy to undermine her political power. She is... there are many critics of her in Mexico. She hasn't done everything that she has promised, but there are also many enthusiastic supporters for her. And one thing that she has said from the very beginning is, we're ready to work with the United States. We're ready to pass information about the different cartels that we have, but we are not ready to have U.S. military presence in this country. That would cross the line, absolutely. And I think many Mexicans are behind her in that respect.
Explain something to me and to our listeners as well. Obviously, Mexico has a military. They have these fentanyl factories or plants, whatever you call them, building this drug or creating this drug that can kill people very easily. And obviously very powerful drug cartels. Why hasn't the Mexican military gone after the fentanyl plants?
For many administrations, Marjorie, it has been clear in Mexico that the cartel do as they wish, particularly in the northern part of the country, and that they are embedded with the corrupt politicians in those regions, and they have made a tacit agreement of who controls what with the Mexican government centralized in Mexico City. So nobody in Mexico is fool enough to think that that argument that the cartels are running the country is not true. But on the other hand, it is something that has complicated the relationship of Mexico with the United States. To me, is this idea, who is guilty in the many deaths of fentanyl in the United States? Is it the provider? those cartels that are sending them, or is it those that are consuming it? And I often think of the equivalent of guns. Why don't we go, if we're going against the cartels, if we're going against the providers, why aren't we going against the manufacturers of guns in the United States to stop the gun violence in this country? It would be logical. It would be following the same path.
That's a great point.
So,
and we do nothing.
Can we come back home here? We've talked to you a lot, and we've talked a lot without you as well, about the near record percentage of Latino voters in the United States who went with Donald Trump. One of the keys to his victory, I think it's fair to say. Apparently, recent polls suggest that that script is being flipped. Is it because of the violence of the immigration, the deportation efforts? Is it the economy? Is it both? What's prompting the move?
A couple of thoughts on this, Jim. One is that indeed there was a big shift of Latinos from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party in the last Trump election. But ironically, and this is the second point, not because you have already a solid voting bloc on your end, that bloc is going to remain with you. It is a very volatile bloc. It was mainly Latino men. And it's important to stress that many people, just in New York, Latinos in particular, who voted for Trump, also voted for Mandami. So you don't need to be going for the Republican Party. You're going for a particular Republican figure that might change the position. It is also important to stress that the largest and fastest growing part of the electorate in the United States, it's independent voters. It's not Republicans or Democrats. It's particularly young independent voters. The Republicans don't keep the hold of Latinos in the next midterm election. I think they're up for grabs. And I think that group has mainly been so volatile, so wishy-washy, because the economy is not what Trump promised. The ICE approach to sending people back home is much more violent. It feels as if it's going against Latinos. It feels as if it's going particularly against Latino men. It's a complicated issue, and I think a lot of Latinos are doubtful that the promises that Trump made were kept.
You know, speaking of going against Latino men, Marjorie and I were talking about a case that confused us. Months ago, in September, this guy, Narciso Barranco, the ICE agents went after him. And what was interesting about the story is, one, he had no criminal record, which is not that unusual based on Trump's fraud about murders and rapists. But secondly, and much more significantly, he had raised 3 sons who were Marines and were United States citizens. But I think our reaction at the time, Marjorie, was more like, what a wonderful family. Why'd they do this? Well, what we've learned in the interim, you may have known about, I didn't know about this thing called parole in place, which apparently a lot of young people who are citizens of the United States are enlisting in the military now because you can protect your undocumented spouse or parents. So I guess 2 questions. One, what do you think of that movement, for lack of a better expression, about enlisting? And 2, do you have any, why was this guy gone after if his sons were all citizens and Marines?
I find that story really fascinating, one of the most prominent ones in the last couple of weeks. It is young Latinos, young female Latinos in particular, that are in the military, that are recruiting other Latinos in order to protect their family members. In other words, you're using the very tool that is attacking Latinos to undermine it, but through a legal and conscientious way. I would assume that at some point that's going to be stopped by the Trump administration now that the story is out there. But I think it's very courageous. I mean, once Latinos have entered this country, legally or illegally, they become incredibly patriotic. They love the country. They are grateful to the country, like many other immigrants. This is a country that saved them, their families. They feel rooted here. And I think that what better institution for them than the military that gives them a sense of committing their passion and their pride to the country. And so it's a very moving story, and I think it will have a lasting impact. It clearly shows where the Latino heart in all this is.
You know, I just want to mention, because it talks about a different time with a different sort of Republican, this all started, this parole in place, back after 2007 when a Sergeant Alex Jimenez was killed in a village south of Baghdad. Meanwhile, his wife, who was in her early 20s, who came over the border from the Dominican Republic, was being deported. And at that time, George W. Bush, who was still the president, and his head of Homeland Security, not Kristi Noem, but Michael Chertoff, remember him?
I remember Chertoff.
Said the sacrifices made by our soldiers and their families deserve our greatest respect, and they formalized the program a few years later. So that was a time when we thought better of deporting the family of people who'd given their life for this country. I mean, it just makes you... it's hard to think of hearkening back for George W. Bush, but it makes you hearken back.
Well, also what you said a minute ago, Ilan, is sadly true, is now that this is a high-profile program, I would assume there's going to be a move by Stephen Miller or Kristi Noem or Trump himself to get rid of this thing immediately.
And I really think that it shows how Latinos feel about the country. It's not that these Latino families are being torn apart between pride and the fact that their elders are being sent back to whatever home, or sometimes to countries that don't even have any connection with their ancestry. And this is a period of intense hatred, intense ambiguity about Latinos in the United States. I am not surprised that people feel very ambivalent about Donald Trump. I think that as we look into the future, or as the future looks into the past, it will be seen as a cathartic moment of loyalty and commitment, but also rejection of Latinos in this country in the process of assimilation. And I think it's a very important aspect that it's the military that we're talking about here that is being the conduit for that commitment of the country, and that the government in the past has supported it, and now it can be at one point stopping all this.
You know, I don't know how many of our listeners or you may have seen this, Ilan, but there was a clip of a gentleman who was on the way to get his car repaired. He's in the car in front. His wife is in the car behind him. He's a Latino man. He's an American citizen. And he gets pulled over. And the reporter went up and asked, "What do you think happened?" And he said, "Well, I look Latino." And that was, everything was fine. Didn't put his blinker on the wrong way. Didn't have a tail light missing. They just pulled him over because he looked Latino. And he was
that was made constitutionally permissible by the Supreme Court ruling, saying racial profiling essentially is fine. And your buddy Kavanaugh saying, what is it called, a Kavanaugh stop?
Kavanaugh stop.
No problem.
Because Kavanaugh said, hey, no big deal. You just show everybody your papers and everything's fine. Really?
Look Latino and sound Latino. If you're speaking Spanish, if you have an accent, you automatically become suspicious. And just if you browse the news these days, whoever is doing the reporting has an American, so to speak, last name, whoever is being reported on, just on the media. I'm not talking about eyes, has a Jimenez or a Sanchez or a Dominguez last name. It really feels as if we're going back to the period of the Nazis, how all the last names sound, and automatically they put you in a cage in the imagination of the country.
Well, you and Joe Rogan, Gestapo was the term he used the other day, and you are one. You and Joe Rogan. You never thought that was going to be said, did you?
Never thought about it.
Well, it is now. Ilan, good to see you.
Thank
Be
you,
well.
Ilan.
Take care.
It's so wonderful to see you guys.
Good to see you, too. We've been speaking with Ilan Stavans, professor of humanities and Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College, publisher of Restless Books. His latest is Conversations on Dictionaries, the Universe in a Book. Thank you very much again for your time. Coming up after this quick break, just enough time in the hour for our venerated appointment listening driveway moment-inducing segment. Two more things. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Near Birmingham, Alabama was thriving, winning academic awards, increasing enrollment, and looking to expand into a bigger space.
It's amazing because at the same time of also gaining traditional knowledge like science, math, I'm also gaining knowledge about my religion.
But then came community backlash and anti-Muslim sentiment. I'm Elsa Chang. That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And CrowdStreet, a platform providing individual investors direct access to private equity, private credit, and real estate. Learn more at crowdstreet.com. And Brightbound. Careers aren't one size fits all, and Brightbound helps students as young as middle school identify their strengths and find careers that fit them just right. Learn more at BRITEbound.org.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're at the library tomorrow. It's time for our On the Way Out. We'll explain to you
On the way out? Are we on the way out?
Well, but when we have a 2-hour show, which is what we're going to have starting in February, there may not be room, sadly, for 2 more things. In any case, our 2 more things segment, Marjorie loves it, though, so why don't you start?
So if you haven't heard about this, about 20 Buddhist monks back in October started walking. They're going to Washington, D.C. They started in Fort Worth, Texas. They're all dressed up in their robes, walking along the highways and byways. They have attracted these huge crowds in church halls and town squares. They exchange flowers with people. They give them peace bracelets. And they have a dog. Their rescue dog is with them. And their following has grown and grown and grown. Fortune magazine quotes this woman, Audrey Pierce, who joined the crowd in South Carolina. She drove 4 hours from her village to see them, and she teared up as one of the monks handed her a flower. She said, "There's something traumatic and heart-wrenching happening in our country every day. I looked into these monks' eyes. I saw peace. They're putting their bodies through such physical torture, and yet they radiate peace." A lot of them are walking barefoot.
I know.
So that would be.
I saw peace.
Anyway, they're like I said, they're all for peace, and you could follow them online, and it's just kind of an uplifting story, and it's amazing how many people have come out to see them. They've really touched a nerve.
How far are they walking again?
2,300 miles. Yikes. Some of them barefoot. One of them lost his leg, actually, where they were hit. Their van was hit by a car, or they're walking, but they have a van with their supplies and stuff because they sleep in tents at night. You know, that's
they're great photos. Still photographs of all of them, and their outfits is the wrong word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the dog. It's a beautiful
the
image.
Rescue dog, yep.
Yep.
It's really uplifting story, I think.
Okay. Well, I have an uplifting story too, Marjorie, because I wanted to match your
uplift.
You do? Yeah. Do you know who T.J. Sabula is?
No.
Yes, you do, actually.
I do?
He was the guy who was suspended from his job at an auto plant the other day.
Yes.
And even though he lost his pay because he was suspended, he is $809,000 richer. We'll explain that in a minute. This guy is, I think you've heard the story. He's a UAW worker at a Ford plant, an F-150 plant in Michigan. The other day, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, showed up. This guy, Sabula, shouted what I think you would agree, Marjorie, is the truth. He shouted out to Trump, "You pedophile protector." Now, to which the president gave him the finger and mouthed the words, "F you." Not terribly presidential, but I mean, in all fairness, Mr. Sabula was not that polite. I thought truth was a defense. I said, is it true he's a pedophile protector? Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Thank you. And there's that First Amendment thing we've heard about before in the past. But Sabula was suspended, I should say. And in response, I don't even remember who this is, 2 entities create GoFundMe pages, and between them, before they shut them down, because $809,000 is a lot, they raised almost $1 million for this guy. Now, the UAW is grieving the suspension, and to his credit, even before, this is critical, even before he knew he had $800,000 from the GoFundMes, when he was suspended without pay, Mr. Sabula said he had no regret for what he had said, because he told the truth. Now, finally, I know some of you are offended. You shouldn't speak that way to the president. And if you think Sabula's behavior was inappropriate, I would ask you to say, what do you think of the behavior of the pedophile protector? Not only in terms of protecting the pedophile, who would be Epstein, but in terms of giving the finger. The guy's the president of the United States. I mean, people get heckled, and screamed at when you're elected leader all the time, is the appropriate, well, I ask you, Margie, is the appropriate response to give them the finger and to mouth F you to the protester?
Well, I mean, where do we begin with the inappropriate responses? I would say that saying the F word is really small potatoes compared to the other things he's doing. But good for this auto worker. He stood up for what he believed in. He accosted the President of the United States. And now
didn't physically accost him, verbally.
Now he can quit his job and take a nice trip to the Caribbean somewhere and come back and buy a house.
He can actually follow pedophile protector all over the country on the $800,000 and talk to him everywhere he goes. So that's it for today's Two More Things.
Okay. We are out of time. But coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk with environmentalist Bill McKibben. He's going to zoom in to tell us good news and bad news about what's going on. There is actually some good news in other countries, not here, about what's going on to protect our planet Earth. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
For that next birthday, holiday, or special occasion, you can give a standout gift. A GBH membership. Thousands of hours of your favorite PBS shows, event deals, and local business discounts. Learn more at gbh.org/gift membership.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Boston Ski and Tennis, helping families stay active and outdoors this winter, offering a range of winter sport products and services with locations in Newton and Westboro or online at bostonskiandtennis.com. And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked number 2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal 2025. babson.edu/grad programs.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, ahead on Hour 3 of BPR. We'll kick off this hour with environmentalist Bill McKibben on oil's role in Trump's takeover of Venezuela, plus Bill McKibben's advice for congressional candidates in this year's midterm election.
I'm Marjorie Egan. That is a segment I wait for all week. Am I the a-hole? Today's scenario involves a man in our beloved Costco cursing out a woman who cut him in line. Who's the bigger jerk, the flippant line cutter, or the man who swore at her for cutting him off? Call or text next on the third hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump has threatened on social media to take military action against Minnesota. NPR's Meg Anderson reports the Insurrection Act is a centuries-old controversial law that would give the president sweeping powers to control federal troops without the state's consent.
The president said he would institute the act if state officials don't, quote, stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE. The law has been invoked before. The last time was during the 1992 Los Angeles riots. During that use, the U.S. Marines opened fire on a home during a misunderstanding between troops and police. Since an ICE officer fatally shot Renee Macklin Good last week in Minneapolis, more ICE agents have been deployed. Community members have increased their protests of the massive surge in immigration enforcement in the Twin Cities, blowing whistles, yelling, and filming ICE officers. ICE has responded with aggressive tactics, using tear gas, pepper balls, and flashbangs to disperse crowds. Meg Anderson, NPR News.
President Trump is scheduled to host Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado at the White House this afternoon. The meeting between Trump and the 2025 winner of the Nobel Peace Prize comes more than a week and a half after the U.S. military seized and removed Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro. NPR's Carrie Kahn has the latest.
Machado has tried to win back Trump's support, heaping praise on him in media interviews and pledging to share her Nobel Peace Prize. But Trump has signaled for now his support is solidly behind Venezuela's interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez, with whom Trump says he recently had a good conversation. Machado's political party is widely seen as the legitimate winners of the 2024 presidential election that then leader Nicolás Maduro claimed to have won. Machado led huge protests and, according to multiple recent polls, remains widely popular inside Venezuela. Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Rio de Janeiro.
A Trump administration official confirms with NPR the administration is reversing $2 billion in cuts to mental health and addiction programs. NPR's Brian Mann has more.
An administration official with direct knowledge of the decision who asked NPR not to be identified because they were not authorized to speak publicly said all the grants are being restored. Hannah Wesolowski with the National Alliance on Mental Illness said care providers faced chaos and confusion.
After a day of panic across the country, nonprofits and people with mental health conditions are deeply alarmed, but hopeful that this money is being restored.
The decision to terminate the funding was reversed after the Trump administration faced bipartisan pushback. Brian Mann, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A new report out this morning finds that government censorship has reached unprecedented levels on American college campuses. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports that while much of the government intervention has targeted public universities and generally conservative states, private colleges in more liberal states like Massachusetts have not been spared.
The report from PEN America finds state laws, federal investigations, and executive orders from President Trump have silenced students, professors, and college presidents. PEN America's Amy Reed says the Trump administration has weaponized government power to coerce colleges into meeting its ideological demands on things like DEI.
We're all in this together. Censorship in one state, censorship on the federal level, it impacts all of us one way or another, directly or indirectly.
The report also finds that more than half of U.S. college students now study in a state with at least one law or policy restricting what can be taught or how campuses can operate. Kirk Carapezza, GBH News.
The lucky winners of $100,000 and $50,000 Powerball prizes are running out of time to claim their cash. Mass lottery officials say the holder of the $100,000 ticket, which was sold in Hyannis, has until Wednesday to cash it in, and whoever has that $50,000 ticket purchased at a liquor store on Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester only has until Tuesday. If the winners fail to come forward, the prizes become part of the net profit of the lottery, returns to the state for distribution to all the cities and towns. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
In Kenya, most of the cars on the road are used imports that run on gas. A new company hopes to change that by producing EVs domestically.
All my life, I've been watching documentaries on vehicles being manufactured out there. One question that always came into my mind, are we able to do this here in Kenya?
That story plus the top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with the former editor of the New York Times, the big boss, Jill Abramson. We're also going to be joined by the reinstated Cannabis Control Commission Chair, Shannon O'Brien. Just two quick more programming notes. The mayor will be with us January 20th, and the governor January 30th. They're both going to be at the library from noon to 1. Hello again, Jim.
One last programming thing before we introduce our next guest. We were talking to Andrea Cabral, former Secretary of Public Safety, about this fabulous piece in Slate by this woman, Laura Jadid, who, as a journalist at Enterprise, went to a job fair to apply to a job with ICE, and much to her amazement, she got the job. She's going to join us next Thursday to describe this whole abomination which gives an apt description of the hiring practices of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Joined now, though, on Zoom by environmentalist Bill McKibben. Bill's an author, educator, co-founder of 350.org, and the founder of thirdact.org. His latest book is Here Comes the Sun, A Last Chance for the Climate, A Fresh Chance for Civilization. Also has a newsletter on Substack titled The Crucial Years, writes regularly for The New Yorker. And since I'm out of breath, Bill, it's a pleasure to see you. How are you?
Good to see both of you. How are you guys?
Fine, thank you. You know, when I heard that the president was going into Venezuela or taking Maduro out of Venezuela, not so much for drugs, but because of the oil there, the dirtiest oil, I guess, in the whole world on top of it, I thought of you because I talk about going backwards. I mean, we wouldn't need that oil if we'd done the right thing for clean energy.
Let's give credit where due. Donald Trump, for once, didn't mess around with any discussions of democracy or human rights or anything else. He said, "You have oil, we want oil, we're taking the oil." It could not have been much more cartoonish. Although I think we're going to see even that exceeded by his efforts to annex Greenland on pretty much the same grounds. You've got oil and maybe some minerals, and it looks like a big piece of real estate. I like real estate. We're taking it. Look, both of these things are deeply, deeply bound up with the moment we're in around climate and energy. Donald Trump and his friends in Houston and Big Oil are trying everything they can to extend the lifetime of the business model of the fossil fuel industry. Their problem is that we've figured out a cheaper, cleaner way to produce the same product. And this is freaking them out to an extraordinary degree. That's why the oil industry spent so much money on the last election. That's why the Trump administration is shutting down wind farms off the coast of New England and solar projects left and right. And instead, they're imagining this world that's going to continue to run on oil for decades and decades, and they're going to secure all the supplies of it they can find. The ironies are enormous. The oil industry, the rational elements of the oil industry understand the predicament that they're in. That's why they're not eager to go invest billions upon billions of dollars in Venezuela. They know that there's no long-term market for it. 60% of the cars sold in China last month came with a plug.
Yeah.
No one's going to need that oil. And to me, the kind of final irony of all of this is that we're now in the midst of this crazy, on every terms conversation about Greenland. There's one important thing about Greenland. I mean, I've been to Greenland. It's got wonderful people, and it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, you hiked there, right?
One thing important about it in any kind of global context, and that is the 2-mile thick sheet of ice on top of it, which, if it melts, will raise the sea level 23 feet. Run that through your map of Boston for a moment. I mean, there's a Gilbert and Sullivan component to this whole thing. It's farcical, but it's also tragic.
Can we? I want to talk about Greenland. We both do with you, but let's talk about Venezuela for another minute. In one of the pieces you wrote about Venezuela, you had a great line saying it's hard to figure out how to fight wars over sunshine. And, I hope you don't get nervous when I say the same thing Margie did. I thought about you at another time. We think about you a lot, apparently.
That's right.
Bill McKibben. And the moment I thought of you is a particular person said something that I'll describe in a minute, and I'll say, can even Bill McKibben smile at this comment? And the comment I'm talking about was the CEO of Exxon when he's sitting next to Susie Wiles with the President of the United States, and after the President says, we're going to do everything, they're all going to invest, they're all going down to Venezuela, they'll do it before dinner tonight, and the CEO of Exxon said with a stern face, it is uninvestable. What was your reaction to that, Bill McKibben?
Again, credit where due. Exxon's biggest goal in the world is to make more money, and they understand that this is not the way to do it. We already are a world awash in oil. The price of it's going down because the demand for it is going down. So yeah, they completely understand the position that we're in. But it does, all of it again, underscore what an amazing opportunity we have right now to transition to a world that runs on sun and wind, all of which is available everywhere. This is the perfect reminder that at the moment, as long as we depend on fossil fuel, we depend on a few deposits of coal and gas and oil. And therefore, the people who control those deposits end up with way, way too much power and money. And now Donald Trump wants to control some more of them. That's basically the story here.
Bill, we learned from you, and now we've tried to be, to broadcast it out as often as possible, how that I think you said to us once, this is not alternative energy anymore, it's cheaper energy. I don't know if there have been surveys. Does the average American know that sun and wind are cheaper than fossil fuels, or is there a small group of us, thanks to you?
I think that the news is spreading, despite, or in some ways, some cases, because of the best efforts of the Trump administration to say the opposite. And I'll give you an example. I just got off, right before this, a press conference that we were doing with a bunch of leaders of the New York State legislature who've introduced this bill to allow this stuff that we're calling plug-in or balcony solar to spread in New York. There are, at the moment, it's only legal in the state of Utah, but there are 25 state legislatures that will consider it this year. And it's the cheapest possible form of this new power.
These are solar panels for apartments kind of thing, right?
Apartments.
Yeah.
You hang them over your balcony and you just plug them into the wall. We actually installed a set of them here 3 days ago at my house, though we don't really need them. We have a lot of rooftop solar already, but since this place is kind of a museum of solar, we went ahead and did it. And to sort of prove the point, it's not quite legal here in Vermont, but the state legislature is busy considering it. And the question they're asking is, should you have to have a qualified electrician on hand in order to do it? And the answer is no. It's much easier than installing your refrigerator because you don't have to move anything around. There would be nothing for an electrician to do because all you do is plug it into the wall, a task that all Americans are capable of. That message is insidiously spreading everywhere, I think, at the moment. People are understanding, especially as the price of electricity goes up and up and up, and as people begin to understand the kind of scam that our data center expansion represents, that they want some alternatives, some ways off that treadmill.
Can I ask what the upfront cost of one of these plug-in panels is?
So a plug-in solar unit in Utah, which is the only place right now you can really go buy one of the kind that I'm describing, 2 big panels and a battery that you feed it through and into the house, about $2,000. That's because there's no market yet in this country. In Europe, the exact same system's about $1,000. You can get the panels themselves without the battery and just feed it in directly when it's sunny out for about $300. So we're talking very low prices. Now, this is maybe enough power to run a very small apartment. It's not enough to run a house, and it's not a replacement for rooftop solar or utility scalar solar or all the other things that we need too. But it is a reminder that at heart, this is the simplest and most elegant of technologies. I mean, look, no one's ever going to put a nuclear power plant on their balcony. No one's ever going to, build a coal-fired power plant on their roof. This is pretty astonishing stuff, and you couldn't have done it 5 years ago, and you can now.
Oliver Stone has a nuclear power plant on his deck, by the way. I just want you to know.
Just one thing I want to be clear about with our listeners: if you do have solar panels on your roof and you have a few of these devices on your deck or your porch or something, what does that mean for your electricity bill every month? And by the way, we are going to be using much more electricity because of all the AI data centers.
We're going to get to that.
It's really going to become.
Yes.
Okay, what does it mean for your bill?
It means, if you have enough of them, it means you don't really have an electricity bill. You do, as long as you stay connected to the grid, and people, I think by and large, should stay connected to the grid because it has great virtues. Everybody, all utilities now have some kind of connection fee that you pay every month, that kind of thing. So you'll still pay something. But man, is this a good hedge against the rapidly rising cost of energy. And that cost of energy, of electricity, I think what egg prices were to the 2024 election, power prices may turn out to be to the 26 election. The Trump administration has given anybody who wants to build a data center permission to do it so that, I guess, so that we can have, pornography machines running 24 hours a day and whatever. And at the same time, they've dramatically restricted sun and wind power, the cheapest power we have. So obviously the price of electricity is just going up and up and up.
Stay on that point for a minute. You wrote a piece, BillMcKibben.substack.com, Pretend You're Running for Congress, in which you expanded on what you just said to Marjorie about electricity costs in this election. Fill in some blanks. What is the advice you would give to candidates?
If I was running for Congress, that's what I'd be saying. The Trump administration, and just to calm down anyone who's concerned, I'm not running for Congress. You don't have to worry about that.
Anyone who's concerned.
The reason that electricity is going up is because we are simultaneously increasing the demand and reducing the supply. And so the price is headed north. In a rational world, what we should be doing is building out renewable energy everywhere we can, as fast as we can. When that happens, the price of power goes way down. How do we know this? Because we can look around the world and see what's happened in other places. And if I was a politician, the place I'd be pointing people to all the time is Australia. They have built so many solar panels in Australia that beginning in June, all Australians will get 3 free hours of electricity every afternoon.
Yeah, that's great.
There's an endless, complex set of conversations to have about, public utility commissions and independent system operators and all the other parts of our vast utility system. Those are not the kind of conversations that get people elected to Congress. The kind of conversations that get people elected to Congress are, why don't we get free electricity for 3 hours every afternoon too? Because every single voter can understand why that would be an appealing thing.
In a minute, we're going to get to some good news. Marjorie was obsessing this morning over...
About good news. Well, there is bad news, obviously, in the United States because Donald Trump doesn't, makes fun of the whole, says this is all a hoax and a scam and stuff. But most other countries in the world, except for us, are kind of moving ahead at a rapid pace, which will certainly ameliorate the situation worldwide.
It'll help. It'll start to help. Look, we're not solving global warming. That's no longer on the option. But we can shave some tenths of a degree off how hot the planet eventually gets, and that will help. India and China, we learned this week, have reduced their carbon emissions to the atmosphere last year.
Wow.
That's remarkable because these are fast-growing and enormous economies. But they're putting up so much renewable energy that they're using less coal for the first time. America raised its carbon emissions 2.4% last year. That's the Trump bump in the, and so now, now we're in this crazy situation of having to kind of rely on India and China to point the way out of the trouble that we're in.
So let's stay on China for a second. You mentioned a few minutes ago, too, what was it, 60% of the cars they're manufacturing? Is that what you said? You plug them in. So as China takes the lead on so many of these clean energy things, what's the political, economic, and whatever other word you choose, what's the impact, the trickle-down impact of them becoming the front runner and leaving us in their wake?
Well, first of all, let's just describe this for what it is. The greatest act of national self-sabotage that ever heard of. I mean, remember that these things were invented here. The solar cell, 1954, Edison, New Jersey, first industrial wind turbine, 1943, 30 miles south of me in the mountains of Vermont. We owned these technologies, and we have given them away, lock, stock, and barrel. And the cumulative effects of that are enormous. Right now, China, you can watch the spread of that Chinese technology across the developing world, Africa and the rest of Asia, and now increasingly Latin America, where first come the panels and the wind turbines, and then come all the things that make use of it, the car being the most obvious example. If people are still thinking that the big three in Detroit are somehow the center of the automotive industry, you're very wrong. There are big Chinese companies now making far, far more cars, and by every account, far, far better cars. Cars that are cleaner, cheaper, quieter, and do more weird stuff. I may have told you guys last time we talked that there's a car, a sort of just kind of standard issue sedan on the market now in China that has a little hatch on top, and you press a button and a drone pops out, goes up in the air and looks ahead to see how long the traffic jam up in front of you might be, and then returns to your car. So, you can either have that, or you can have 18 cup holders in your new Escalade. I mean, that's the choice. We're having our lunch. We're not. It's not that China's eating our lunch. It's that we're catering it for them. You know? And it's appalling. But for the world at large, I guess it's probably reasonably. At least someone is doing this. We saw at the last big global climate talks, which were in November in Brazil, and which the U.S. absented itself from, the only country that didn't attend. And now, in the last couple of weeks, we've officially left the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the world's only attempt to really deal with this process. But we saw in Brazil that the Chinese were just kind of assuming diplomatic leadership on this, and by extension, a lot of other issues, I think, going forward.
Are we the only country in the world that is no longer part of that climate convention you talked about?
We have that. Not only that proud distinction, we've put more of the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than any other country, too. So
what do you? How is
American exceptionalism?
Yeah, exactly.
I know our education system isn't what it was, but still, that doesn't explain why all these other countries and the citizens of most of these countries, they've not been fooled. It seems like it's only here. I mean, they'll have people in them that want to make money from coal or oil.
This was the world headquarters of the hydrocarbon industry. And it was the place where this way of life went deepest. Car culture really is a product of the United States, and on and on and on. And sadly, I'm afraid, we may be the country where it's easiest to game our political system with large amounts of money.
Yeah, with money. Yeah.
And so it's probably no wonder that we've ended up in this place. But the price we're going to pay is very high. And we haven't really begun to realize it, because it'll take a few years for that technological lead to just sort of become, but we're sort of, we're Wile E. Coyote out over the edge of the cliff, spinning our legs in the air at this point.
This is probably inappropriate at this point in the discussion, but we pulled some sound thanks to you. You wrote sort of a recap of 2025. We should have gotten to this much earlier and built from this, but I can't not play this. You excerpted some, in your piece, some wonderful comments from the President of the United States when he's speaking to the UN General Assembly in September about science and environmentalism. And I thought of it because he said we're not solving global warming, and that's because you don't know what you're talking about, because as he said, it used to be global cooling. So here is Donald Trump, and we'll get a response from, in the appropriate time in a minute, from Mr. McKibben. Here's excerpts from Trump's speech to the General Assembly in September of last year.
It used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable.
Bill McKibben, do you want to kill all the cows?
Yeah, no, I killed 3 or 4 this morning already before we got on. What's a rifle for? The all of this would be just comical.
I know.
Were it not for the fact that this same guy is, directing his troops to execute Americans out in the streets of Minneapolis as we speak. Somehow we ended up with an idiot as president of the United States and a malevolent and a malevolent idiot. And we've got to start figuring out how to get rid of him. That's what Third Act this year is a lot about, the midterm elections. But we've also got to figure out how to build a world that works in the meantime. And part of that is, I'm writing this newsletter today, and I'm writing about this balcony and plug-in solar stuff. And the picture that I put at the top, that when this comes out later today, you'll see, is a picture of Gandhi in front of his spinning wheel. You'll remember that part of his program was, along with standing up to the British, was about self-reliance and what they called Swadeshi. He spun cloth for an hour every day so that Indians could make their own clothes, not rely on the British for them. I think if Gandhi were alive today, he'd have a solar panel there in front of him, because it begins to represent the same kind of possibility for ourselves and our communities. There's a liberatory aspect to this too, and it feels to me like some sources of liberation and solidarity right now more than we've ever needed them.
Bill, it's a pleasure to hear your voice and to hear your thoughts, as it always is. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, and I love reading. I love reading your stuff. It's just great. New Yorker and the Substack thing. It's really great. Thank you so much.
You take care, friends.
See you soon.
Okay, we have been speaking with Bill McKibben, author, educator, co-founder of 350.org, founder of ThirdAct.org, where you can contribute. It's Third Act is for people over 60, I think, if they want to join.
I don't know what the cutoff is. Well, I don't know if it's a cutoff,
65.
but it's for older people.
It's for older people. Okay, that's why it's called Third Act. Okay, his latest book is Here Comes the Sun, A Last Chance for the Climate and a Fresh Chance for Civilization. Substack called The Crucial Years, and he writes regularly for the New Yorker magazine.
By the way, he said to me when I attempted to join Third Act, he called me and said, I think for you it's Fourth Act, Jim.
Fourth Act.
You have to join
Clinging to a slippery pole.
I'd say that's true.
Okay.
What's coming up, Marjorie?
We are going to, Am I the A-hole day, Jim?
Yes, it is.
Today's prompt comes from a stressful trip to Costco and a dreaded line cutter. We're going to give you all the details, and we're going to ask you what you think. A made-for BPR segment up next on Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
A Muslim school near Birmingham, Alabama was thriving, winning academic awards, increasing enrollment, and looking to expand into a bigger space.
It's amazing because at the same time of also gaining traditional knowledge like science, math, I'm also gaining knowledge about my religion.
But then came community backlash and anti-Muslim sentiment. I'm Elsa Chang. That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Boston Harbor Hotel, celebrating the 37th Annual Boston Wine and Food Festival with winemaker-hosted dinners, seminars, and more from January through March. Details at boswineandfoodfestival.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. For you disloyal people, by the way, who write in and say, we really hope you will dump Am I the A-hole when you go to a 2-hour show, my response is, forget about it. So it is time for our weekly Am I the A-hole segment. Today's prompt comes from Reddit, posted by a man. So our coworkers think you might already be able to guess who the a-hole is right off the bat. But let me finish laying it out. He writes that he had just finished checking out when he realized, at a grocery store, I think, he'd picked up the wrong item. So he gets in a long line at the supervisor's desk so he can get it all sorted out. Then he says he's in line at the supervisor's desk. A woman nudges in front of him in line, giving what he describes as, quote, an unapologetic wave, saying, quote, I'll be quick, I just have a question. He responds, I don't give a crap, wait in line. And when she gave him a look again, in his own words, that like he was an alien, and told him he was being rude, he doubles down and says, fine, pretty bleeping please then. What makes your question more important than mine? So our question for you on Am I the A-hole at 877-301-8970 is the original poster, that's the F-bomb dropper, the A-hole, or is it always a-hole behavior to cut someone in line no matter what the circumstances are? 877-301-8970, call or text. Who's in the right here? And does the man swearing takes away what I assume all of us would agree would be his, let's call it, rightness in this circumstance? Now, Marjorie, we've discussed line cutting a lot on this show. Yes, we have. What is your verdict? Who is the a-hole?
Well, I commend the man for telling the woman, hey, you know, you're cutting in front of me. What makes your quick question any more important than my quick question? I think he went over the edge when he started swearing at her and in a very hostile way. I thought that was a little bit much. But so it's not. His wife was right. The wife said he overreacted.
So he became the a-hole because of his inappropriate reaction.
No, I think she was the a-hole for cutting in line.
Got it, yeah.
And he was not the a-hole until he sort of lost his temper.
But then he
started throwing around the F-bombs.
Okay, let me tell you something. I'm an absolutist on these kinds of things. A line cutter is always the a-hole. And I'm not advocating for foul language, I should say, but a line cutting is one of the 7 original sins, as far as I'm concerned. You don't do it under any circumstance, and she provoked the guy. Okay. So that is the bottom line. The woman, the line cutter, is the a-hole.
So let me ask you a question, Jim.
Yeah, you may.
Say you go to a concert, and a concert's a good example.
Okay, good.
And 50 feet ahead of you, you see somebody you knew, like, say you saw me, 50 feet ahead of you. I think you would walk 50 feet up and say, hello, Marjorie.
But I want you to know.
You would not walk back 50 feet to your space in line.
I want you to know.
On.
I will not say who it was.
Yeah.
My younger daughter and I were at the Bruce Springsteen concert at the Garden a couple of years ago.
But you have ticketed seats.
What?
You have ticketed seats. You know where you're going to sit.
Yeah.
That's different.
No, but we're still waiting in line to get into the thing, and it was cold, and a good friend of ours came up, and I actually said to him, when he was standing with us a long time, you got to go back to your place in line.
Yeah.
I think I did anyway. Don't ask me questions.
I mean, that's a tricky one. Well, we have the little sound from the tricky situation I gave you the clips with the sound.
This is Curb Your Enthusiasm. We've played this one about 400 times on the show.
Because it's a good example of what we're talking about.
Here's Larry David. He calls out a woman, very similar situation, for attempting a classic chat and cut at my favorite place. That's the buffet line.
She's doing a chat and cut.
Chat and cut?
Really? Yes. So feigning familiarity with someone she vaguely knows for the sole purpose of cutting in line. Positive. She'll be picking up a plate any second. Watch.
You're like beaming with light.
There she goes. Yeah. Excuse me. Hi. First of all, congratulations on a great attempt at a chat and cut. Really good.
Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. I just saw my friend.
Yeah, I know a chat and cut when I see it.
Okay.
Do you know her at all?
No, I honestly don't.
You think she's doing a chat and cut?
I kind of feel like you are.
Okay, so that is, we would agree.
Chat and cut.
And he, by the way, he didn't lose his temper. He acted appropriately. The issue really here is that everybody listening is going to say you can't cut in line, I assume. But the issue is, did the guy who is cut in line on lose his righteousness by using foul language directed at this woman. Marjorie thinks yes. I think
this is why. This is why I like to go to Trader Joe's. You know why?
Is there one
they have
common
one line? So you're not in one of those situations when you're at the supermarket and you think you're in a good line, but then you realize the person in front of you has 9,000 things in their carriage and you're screwed. You know what I mean? It takes away that extra stress of buying your groceries.
Can I tell you how principled I am about this, by the way, despite you mocking me about... No, this one is a little truer than the first story I told. If I'm in line at a supermarket, okay, not a common line like Trader Joe, and somebody, and I have a lot of stuff, which I always do, and someone comes up who only has 2 items.
2 items. You volunteer.
Excuse me. I will always let them in with one exception.
What's that?
If there are people behind me. And if there are people behind me, you know what I do? And this is true. I'm raising my right hand. I turn around to them, not if there are 20 people there, and said, is it okay if I let this person in line? Because I'm screwing them.
You are screwing them.
I'm choosing to be screwed in my own case, but I shouldn't be making the decision for them.
I think you're only entitled to allow the person with 2 items in front of you if there are no people behind you.
Now, let me say,
I don't think you should enmesh those people in your supposed magnanimity.
Well, let me say one more thing.
What?
And I've thought about this a lot. Even if you are right, were right, let's say a week ago, that by virtue of him cursing at the woman who cut the line, he lost all, standing as the person in the right. I would argue, and I assume this is very difficult for you to disagree with, even if he was wrong a week ago, once the President of the United States gave a guy the finger and mouthed F you, that at that point, all bets are off. 877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole, the line cutter or the guy who was cut in on, but who used foul language directly?
The Trump thing could start a trend. People can go to rallies that he's at in any opportunity and call him the pedophile protector, get sworn at, and then open a GoFundMe page.
Exactly. It's an excellent idea. Melissa, you're in Rhode Island. You're starting things off. Who's the a-hole?
Oh, the woman is the a-hole. You cannot cut in line.
Good for you. Why?
I remember years ago. I'm at the United counter. I don't know if you guys remember how it used to be.
Mob scene.
Remember?
Yes.
This man cut in front of me. I lost it. I didn't curse at him, but I publicly shamed him, and he spunk back and got at the end of the line.
How'd you publicly shame him? What'd you do?
I raised my voice and I said, "What are you doing? You're cutting in line? Who do you think you are?" That was it. I didn't curse at him, but
wow.
Melissa, you are a woman of principle. You're exactly the kind of person we were looking for today. Thank you much for what you did, and thank you for your call. That's a patriot to me.
Doug in Dorchester has it right. He said the woman who cut is the a-hole because line rules are the only remnant of civilization we have left. I think you nailed it, Doug.
That is so true.
That's it.
It's all we have.
That's it. Okay, 877-301-8970.
Think Donald Trump stood in line once in his whole life?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
How do you feel about standing in line? Do you ever think about what you wouldn't stand in line for?
I must admit, I have done, when I've seen somebody I knew, I've gone up and talked to them.
That's wrong.
And then I have not gone back to my place.
That's
and
wrong.
Stayed
It's wrong.
There. Yeah.
It's wrong. Did I ever tell you the time I was at a Springsteen concert? Oh, I did tell you. Okay, fine.
You told me that, Jim.
877-301-8970.
Jim and the boss. They're tight.
I wasn't saying we're tight. I was saying I did. Friends here. Who's our next person?
I'll look at some texts in the meantime.
Okay,
okay. We have people complaining that we're using the word a-hole.
Oh, we're not doing that anymore.
Like
we had a vote on that.
Yeah,
we put it in a poll.
Yeah,
jerk or a-hole, jerk lost.
The people that or people that did not like this loss. I think it's a comic relief kind of thing.
Ellen in Westport, you're next.
They haven't been in a Trader Joe's store with a single line. Wow, everyone I've been in is a single line.
Actually, the one in Cambridgeport is not a single line. I just realized.
Bad.
Yeah,
very, very bad.
Ellen in Westport.
In Brookline, they have two single lines.
That's fabulous.
One in the front and one in the back.
That is such a beautiful moment. Ellen in Westport, how are you, Ellen?
Hi, how are you doing? I haven't heard from you this year, so happy belated.
No, actually, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, Ellen, where you been?
We love you, Ellen. What's up?
I've been trying to call, but you guys are so popular.
We're very popular. Very popular. Go ahead, what's up?
The lady that tried to cut him off, she should have known better than that. That is just so rude.
Rude.
And I would have reacted the same way the man did because she was so rude to begin with.
Yeah.
All the way around.
You just flip the finger.
You have to be careful of emotion.
you ever had an experience like that, Ellen? And how have you dealt with it if you have?
Yes, I have, and I usually will react the way the person has reacted to me at the beginning. If they swear at me, they're going to get it back.
Beautiful.
I'm really bad with drivers.
Yeah.
You cut me off, and I'm going to make sure that you know I'm mad.
I bet you are. Ellen, that was an extraordinary phone call, like all of your phone calls are. Thank you for, we've missed you. Thanks for calling in.
Now, here's a little wrinkle.
Please.
One of the texters says, the funny thing is, if someone says, would it be okay if I cut in front of you, that would be different. But if they assume...
Unless there are people behind you.
Unless there are people behind you. But to assume it is okay is no.
That's actually a good point.
Yeah, that's
so
a
if
good
this was
point.
the only guy in line,
right,
or the back of the line, and she said, "Can I do it?" Well, obviously, if you get the permission of the person,
yeah.
But should you even put the person in that position? I guess that's the question. Because it's pretty hard to say no, right? Isn't it harder to say no?
It is hard to say no, but if they asked, it's like when somebody's trying to get cut in front of you on the highway, or on the street.
You have never let anybody in your adult life cut in front of you.
Yes, I have. I am really working hard on that. And why is it so hard to do? You're sitting in traffic. You are stopped in traffic, and somebody wants to come into the line. Why is it so hard?
Because the way they got to that point is by doing like the lane they're not supposed to be in to get to the front of the thing. I'm with you, Marjorie. Stand your ground. I mean, don't soften on that issue. And let's go to Emma and Milton. We're talking about a line cutter and a guy who is the line cuttee who used foul language, who is the a-hole. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, I do think it is the woman who cut in line. And it just reminded me of this story that I feel you would all enjoy. I was making phone calls for Kamala Harris in last year, and I talked to this woman who lived in New York City. She was an older woman, and she said she was not voting for Donald Trump because decades earlier she was waiting in line to vote, and a man cut her off, and she was very frustrated, and the person next to her said, "You know who that is? It's Donald Trump."
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Good. This woman was, had other issues with him, presumably, but her frustration was that he cut everyone off in line to vote, which really didn't surprise me.
Emma, that's a good one. Thanks for sharing that story. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
I was in line for fried dough at a flea market. Long line, waited 10 minutes. By this point, a woman and her daughter tried to cut in the line, and I loudly called her out for it, which caused a swarm of husbands to start yelling at her. So she must have been in the wrong.
You know what just occurred to me? You know what one
People
situation...
with kids, I've let them in.
You know what one circumstance...
Feel bad for them.
Well, if they have a little kid, like a baby kind of thing.
And the kid is grabbing everything
Yeah,
up.
but you know what people have done? And I know this firsthand.
What?
Some people borrow babies to get... and baby borrowing, as far as I'm concerned, is really... crossing the line. You know, you were just raising it, whatever that story was,
About the
text
flea
you read
market?
a minute ago. Yeah.
Oh, if someone
What
asks?
do you do if there are like three people in front of you cut in and a person allows them in, but essentially, again, this gets back to my point before, that man or woman is allowing them in on your behalf without getting your consent.
Yeah, you can't do that.
So do you say something?
I think you're entitled to say something.
I think you are too.
I think you are too. Here's Kristen from Shrewsbury. Of course, Trump has never waited in line. Remember when he pushed foreign dignitaries out of the way on the stage
to get to
in the middle of the stage? I do. That was his first
like
term.
a G8 meeting or something,
yeah,
or whatever it was.
The first term was like small potatoes compared to what's going on now. 877-301-8970 is the number. Phil from Cape Cod. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Phil. You got to turn your radio down, Phil. Phil, radio down, please.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
He's turning it down. He's turning it down.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll leave the room.
Hi. We got to put you on hold for a second, Phil. Turn the radio down. We'll take a call, and then we'll come right back to you. But leave the radio down.
The worst is when drivers speed up to cut the exit line 40 cars ahead.
Well, you know where they do
totally
it the worst?
Unforgivable.
They do it in the Somerville, Cambridge turn. You know, it's Alston, Brighton, and Somerville.
Yes.
They do that all the time. And they also do it at that Newton exit on the Turnpike East. Drives me out of my mind into Newton Center. Donald in Leominster, hi.
Hey, how you doing?
We're good, I think.
My thing is we're standing, my wife and I, in the ice cream line waiting behind one guy to get to the window. will come in his family, and all of a sudden you're behind 10 people.
Now that's family, though. That's a tough one. So what's the verdict on that one, Donald?
I'm definitely thinking they're a-hole.
Listen to him. I love that evil laugh there.
He said the guy that invited the 9 family members. Yeah, you do see that a lot of times when people, mom will be waiting or dad will be waiting, and suddenly the 6 kids show up to join her.
That's a tougher one. But if it's 9 people. Go ahead, Donald.
The second one.
Yeah.
The second one is there are 2 people. There's one in one line and one in the other.
Listen to him.
And then they jump over when they get to the window.
This guy, I love this guy. Donald, thank you.
Oh, well, haven't you done that at the supermarket?
Yeah.
So you get in line and your spouse or your kid gets in the other line to see who gets there first.
Yeah, that's horrible. Oh, you mean in 2 places?
Yeah. Or
that's wrong.
You get in line.
You
get in line, and then you send the person shopping, and they buy all the stuff and bring it back to the front where you've been waiting in the checkout line. I have done that.
You have not.
I have.
You're standing in line with nothing, waiting for them to deliver you stuff?
Well, not all the stuff, but if I'm in line and I forgot a few crucial things like the milk or the butter or something, you send one of the kids to get the milk and the butter.
Well, here's a good one you may relate to. Woody, the UPS driver, is one of your favorite texters. Is it okay to cut in line if you use the bus lane to get to the front? He's asking for a friend. He says, "Thank you, Woody, for bringing it up." It's
well, the beauty of the bus lane is you usually don't have to cut in front because you're then in 2 lines. You know what I mean? So you don't have to really cut in front of somebody in the left-hand line.
Lindsay in the car.
But it's always dicey. It's true, Woody. It's dicey.
Good point. It's worse for the poor employee. This is totally true. Who is stuck, often mediating the fight between the 2 adults about who is first. Phil in Cape Cod will try you again. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter if the person you cut in front of is an asshole.
A-hole, we call him.
As soon as you cut in line, a-hole, sorry.
It's okay.
The person who cuts in line is a bigger a-hole.
Well, see, I am with you. I mean, I think I'm glad you waited to say that. I think that's like almost a truism. Would you not agree with that by definition?
That's a very good point.
The default is
that's a very good point.
Thank you, Phil, for your call.
Thank you, Phil. And thank you for your patience.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. I just talked a little while ago about the 20 monks that are walking from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. in a peace solidarity kind of thing. Kathleen from North Brickville wants to know, what would the monks who are walking to D.C. have done?
They'd let everybody in line.
And they'd still be in Fort Worth. They wouldn't have made any progress at all.
So Mike in North Carolina says, the only time I let someone cut in front of me, that makes sense, is if they've been elected most improved camper 2 years in a row. There's one person in the studio.
Formative tragedy for Jim.
And for new listeners, I just want to say, it was humiliating to be most improved camper. There is nothing more humiliating than being most improved camper 2 summers in a row. But sadly, I have that designation. Jane in Andover, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi. This happened to me many years ago when I first came to Boston. Yeah. I was in my first week on a new job, and I was 21 years old.
Yeah.
And I was in line at the Old Windsor Button Shop. And
I know that shop.
There were many people. Yes. And there were a couple of people ahead of me, and all of a sudden a nun in full habit got in front of me in the line. And this was new to me because I am not Catholic and I came from a small town in Ohio. And I sort of didn't know what to do. There were a lot of people behind me. And she said, "You don't mind, do you?" And I didn't know what to do. So I said, "No." And I let her in front of me.
Well, I mean, it's pretty hard to throw a nun out of line. Would you not agree, even in retrospect, Jane?
But, they just wear the habits to fool people, Jim. Wouldn't that be your analysis? Not really a nun.
Jane, good story. Thank you for sharing it. We appreciate it.
Yeah. I love it how Mayor Fry from Minneapolis was continually called out for using the F word to ICE, but it's not even a surprise or barely a criticism in the media for Trump. Well, he actually didn't say it. He mouthed it, right?
So what?
To say that twice and flip off an auto worker. That's a good point.
By the way, I am embarrassed. I never thought of that.
Why didn't we think of that?
Right. And as Fry said, which is worse, the murder of a young woman or me dropping an F-bomb?
Yeah, me dropping an F-bomb. On the other hand,
that's a great point.
Dead.
And Trump does it in response to somebody using their First Amendment to heckle them. That is really a good point. Thanks for making, even though it has nothing to do with our conversation.
Well, in terms of like who's doing the swearing, I
Here's
guess.
an anonymous texter. Hi, Jim and Marge, as the person called you. With the exception of other drivers, I can't let line cutters go without being confronted. Aren't we all of equal importance? Cutting in line is like someone saying, I'm more important than you. Cussing them out is up to you. The only exception is if the person really didn't realize they'd cut in line. A very thoughtful text, I should say.
That is very thoughtful.
Occasionally people don't realize that they cut in line.
Okay, we have a scufflaw that's texting, though. This person goes to the Union Square Trader Joe. Do you know where that is, Jim?
Yeah.
Oh, in New York City. This is in New York
I know.
City. Okay. The Union Square Trader Joe's in New York City. Always go with a friend. One person gets in the line, one person goes shopping,
wrong.
and then they switch.
Just wrong.
Well,
it's wrong.
They've texted.
You do it.
They're
so
not apologizing.
And by the way, you're not Union Square in New York City. That's what you just said you did with your kids or whoever you did.
Well,
with.
not the whole list of shopping things.
How
But
many
haven't
items?
you ever
How many
gotten-
items?
Haven't you ever gotten to the checkout line? You've forgotten something.
Yes.
I mean, if I'm there by myself, I just say to the register person, because there's so much stuff to check out, I'm just running to get the milk, and then I go
that's analogous
flying down
to
the aisle.
I'll get out of the bus lane as soon as the bus comes.
I make sure I have enough stuff to keep her busy, but I don't see that as a big sin where you send somebody to get 2 items.
Let
or
me tell you
something.
something. Marjorie, I've told you this many a times, dear listeners.
Mhm.
When Marjorie only makes occasional eye contact when she's talking to me, it means she's making up this story. And what that means is, exactly, it's not a few items. It's a significant number of items,
Okay.
which is not okay, which is totally unacceptable. Brian in East Boston, welcome. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
We're good.
So I have a scenario where basically I used to be a bartender for 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And at bars, there are no lines. You just come up
That's
to
a
the
great
bar,
point.
you look at what's there, you decide what you like. And the bartender, for efficiency purposes, prefers this scenario because by the time you get to the front, you know what you want. I can take your order. I can take 5 people's orders. But for some reason, at concerts, outdoor venues, most recently at Ryan Landry's play, people line up in a single-filed queue all of a sudden at specific types of events. And I don't understand why that occurs and why it changes from the bar approach, which is, this is the way you go to a bar versus standing in line when you're at an outdoor venue or something like that.
That's a good point. It's different.
Well, it is a good point, but the only problem, since you were a bartender for 20 years, while I understand it gives them enough time to figure out what they want, you can favor some people, generally the attractive ones, and disfavor everybody else. Isn't that true, Brian? Be honest.
Well, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
And oftentimes, 5 people are getting the same thing, so I can make all those things at the same time. It just adds to the efficiency.
We got it.
In the outdoor, the scenario changes.
We got it. It was a great call. Thank you. Jeff in Andover, the line cutter is the a-hole. People who cut lines are the same people who join ICE. That may be a little extreme.
And
but
here's Todd from Manchester. He's at the playing in the lounge tonight. He says, the sign at the register at the grocery store said 12 items or less. So I changed my name to Less.
But I'm bummed. Thank you. Now
so lame.
I am so confident about my prediction here.
Yeah.
You get enraged if somebody cuts a line in front of you. Is that not correct?
But I take that rage and I swallow it and I push it way deep down.
Drives you out of your mind, right?
Oh, it's so rude.
So rude.
But you know what I find really entertaining? I love when people are at least clever about it. That I'll allow.
Like what?
When they walk up to, oh, look, Marjorie, it's so good to see you. And then the only reason they did that was to stand in line next to Marjorie. So that's how they cut the line.
Well, that's
the
the Larry David thing. We just played the chat and cut. A chat and cut. Yeah.
No, if you're creative about it, I'll allow it.
Okay, you're a nice guy.
I've done that. I must admit, seeing a friend 50 feet ahead.
I do it a lot, actually.
Oh, there we go. There we go. It's hard to resist.
What are you doing on the show thing?
We're going to be talking to Representative Jim Clyburn today about his new book, The First 8. Yeah. So
great.
What is The First 8?
Well, so many people came up to him and thought that he was the first black congressman from South Carolina.
Oh, that's
There were
fabulous.
8 before him, so he documents them all and talks about how they've influenced him right up until this moment for what they dealt with in Reconstruction and
By
after.
the way, the man who history suggests was the reason Joe Biden was elected president of the United States after he'd lost 5 primaries in a row.
He's such an inspirational
He is
guy.
fabulous.
He's got to be in his mid-80s
That's great.
by now.
He is.
He is. He's in his late 80s, actually. And
Wow.
he was an historian. He was a history teacher before
I didn't know that.
entering Congress.
Oh, that's great.
So it's appropriate he
What
writes
else?
this.
That's great.
Scottish Fish, the Celtic Music Group, joins us ahead of the Boston Celtic Music Festival presented by Passim. And we have a performance as well.
Fabulous.
There's a connection to our beloved Brian O'Donovan, too. They're artists in his name this year. And then we talk about this inaugural conference. If you want to be a writer, if you're working at being a writer, publishing a book, there's a conference happening this weekend that aligns people with agents, A-list artists, publishers, booksellers.
Wow.
This is an opportunity to elevate writers.
That's terrific.
Fabulous.
Thank you for listening to another
I
edition of
see
Boston
you.
Public Radio.
Don't cut in line in front of Jared. Let me just say it right
Keep
now.
up with us 24/7 way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we'll be live at the Boston Public Library with former New York Times executive editor Jill Abramson for a press play, plus recently reinstated chair of the Cannabis Control Commission, Shannon O'Brien, Congressman Bill Keating on Zoom to talk about the future of NATO, plus live music Friday with organizers and musicians from Which Side, a protest music teach-out, including organizers Joyce Lenahan and James Sullivan and 4 musicians, and of course, our media maven, local woman Sue O'Connell. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Colin Cockrell ran our YouTube stream. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Stay tuned to Jared and the Culture Show, which starts immediately after we are done here on 89.7 GBH. I'm Mark.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in today. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. And if you're in the neighborhood, stop by the Boston Public Library. It's going to be a really good show.
Bye.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Fixed Dental, offering permanent teeth-on implants, customized in their laboratory, enabling their doctors and technicians to oversee every aspect of the smile design. Learn more about all the treatments offered at Fixed at fixeddental.com. On the next Local Lens, a ballerina who defected from the Soviet Union trains a group of students at Boston Ballet. Don't miss Woman in the Mirror, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, The First 8. The new book by Congressman Jim Clyburn examines the lives of 8 black members of Congress elected during Reconstruction, and a brief window when their vision of multiracial democracy took hold. Writing as both historian and political leader, Clyburn draws connections between their legislative achievements and the ongoing struggles over representation, voting rights, and the strength of American democracy, illustrating how the challenges they faced help explain the political dynamics of today. Then it's fiddles and 5 musicians who've been playing together since they were kids. Scottish Fish joins us to turn up the volume on this weekend's Boston Celtic Music Festival, a multi-venue celebration of the rich traditions of Celtic music, song, and dance. And To Be Read is writing a new chapter for writers. This inaugural conference will bring authors face-to-face with the publishing world with a focus on craft, careers, and connection. If you're a writer trying to break into the book business, this is the place for you. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Jared Bowen. This is the Culture Show on 89.7 on the GBH News YouTube channel. Today we look at a chapter of American political history that's often overlooked and yet foundational to the country we know. In the years after the Civil War, 8 black congressmen from South Carolina served in Congress during Reconstruction, among the first to test what representation would and should look like in a nation still reeling from enslavement. Congressman Jim Clyburn, Democrat of South Carolina, explores their lives and legacies in his new book, The First 8, a personal history of the pioneering black congressmen who shaped a nation. It's a history he's uniquely positioned to tell. As a longtime member of Congress, former Majority Whip, and one of the most influential black lawmakers of our time, Clyburn's own career, from championing voting rights to shaping national elections, stands in direct conversation with the Reconstruction leaders whose work he chronicles. His book is part biography, part political reflection, and part reminder of how fragile and hard-won American democracy has always been. Congressman Clyburn joins us now. Welcome to the Culture Show. It's a privilege to have you with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, people may not realize that history is who you are before Congress, that you are an historian. What was the impetus for telling this story at this time?
Well, it all came from a conversation one day when someone with really a group visiting my office asked about the pictures on my wall. And there were pictures of these 8 gentlemen. And when I explained it, one of them said to me, well, I thought you were the first African-American to serve in Congress from South Carolina. And I kind of playfully said, no. Before I was first, there were 8. And so I said to my staff later that day that my next book was going to be about these 8 people. So I started out to write the book, sort of a fun thing to do. But then the election of 2020 took, and I'm in the middle of this book. Then we saw the reaction to that election, and I saw what was going on up in Michigan. People were banging on doors trying to set up alternative sets of electors in Pennsylvania. The telephone call down to Georgia to find me 11,700 and some odd votes. And then it occurred to me that what was going on here was exactly what happened after the 1876 presidential election that led to the downfall of these 8 people. And so I decided that the book had to be about more than just them as people, but it had to be about the events surrounding their service and their post-service.
Well, before we talk about the downfall, which is, as you write in your book, a cautionary tale, what gave rise to them? What happened? What was the moment in this country after, of course, the Civil War that did allow for their success and entry into Congress?
Well, the Emancipation Proclamation came, written, of course, in 1862 to be effective, the second one anyway, to be effective on January 1, 1863. And of course, that set in motion the formerly enslaved to be free. Now, I know, and I make it very clear in the book, that slavery was not abolished really until the 13th Amendment, which came later. But the fact of the matter is, these people had started to get involved based upon the Emancipation Proclamation, which was Abraham Lincoln's executive order. They began, new constitutions were written here in South Carolina. The Constitution of 1868 led to them being able to participate. Now, all of these people were not enslaved. Only 3 of these 8 were. All of them were not South Carolinians. People came into South Carolina. You had Robert Elliott came from Massachusetts. Richard Kane came down from New York after having lived in Ohio. And some were free in South Carolina. Robert DeLarge and Thomas Miller, they were freedmen. And so only 3 of the 8 had ever been enslaved, and those 3 got their freedoms in 3 different ways. Only one was emancipated. One was the Great Escape. Robert Smalls, the most people know about, and Joseph Rainey, who was the first of the 8, his father purchased his family's freedom. So the big issue here, though, in my opinion, is the fact that between number 8 and yours truly, number 9, there are 95 years. And that was the period of Jim Crow.
And also, as you detail in the book, so much of what we're experiencing in this country today in terms of politics, some of which you just outlined, of course, after the 2020 election, was absolutely happening in their time. It wasn't as if they were able to enter into Congress unencumbered, that there was division, there was fraud, there was every intention to make sure that that didn't happen for them.
And there was extreme violence. This was when the Ku Klux Klan was born down in Tennessee and brought in to South Carolina and Mississippi. This was rifle clubs. These were not people going out skeet shooting. These rifle clubs were used to wreak violence, to keep these people from participating in the government and from voting. And you got to understand, especially in South Carolina, it's the only state in the nation where the majority of the population was black, and the majority of the elected officials were black. The fact of the matter is, at one point, of South Carolina's 5 congresspeople at the time, which is what we were allotted, 4 of them were African Americans. And so they were present in the government according to their presence in the population. So in order to keep these people from having their fair representation, you had to keep them from voting, keep them out of office. And so all of these things that came to pass, I call them creative devices that were used to keep them from participating. It wasn't anything for them many of them to be incarcerated on trumped up charges, using the judicial system to keep them from participating. So much of what we see happen around us today is exactly what happened after the 1876 elections.
And as you've mentioned, there was a near 100-year gap between the last of them and you being the one that many people think are the first. And as you mentioned, you had their portraits in your office. Was there something, as you write in the foreword too, there was an influence that they held over you. Was there an essence of them, or what about them did you really take away to guide you through your entry into Congress? And you've experienced many of the same things.
Oh, yes. I mean, so many of the things that people think came from me, I got from them. My dad made me learn stuff about these people. Robert Smalls was his favorite. He seemed to be everybody's favorite. And so you'll see a bit of Robert Smalls in me. So is Joseph Rainey. Joseph Rainey was a barber. And so I sometimes smile when I hear people talk today about barbershop and beauty shop politics, like that's something new. The very first African-American to even serve in the United States, or to be elected to the United States Congress, was a barber. Richard Kane, who was number 4 on this list, pastored at one point, Emmanuel AME Church down in Charleston that everybody knows about these days because of that infamous incident that occurred with those 9 poor souls being murdered. But Richard Kane pastored that church before becoming the 14th AME bishop. So there's so much about this. Thomas Miller, who was number 7 on this list, became the first president of South Carolina State University, my alma mater. So there's so much about these people's lives that impact today in my life. So it's just amazing for me to write about it.
Well, I want to go back to Robert Small. By the way, if people are just tuning in, we're talking to Congressman Jim Clyburn about his new book, The First 8, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressman Who Shaped a Nation. The first 8 before him, nearly 100 years later. You've mentioned Robert Smalls a couple of times. You call him in your book the most consequential South Carolinian who ever lived. This is why you're writing this book, to remind people of this history, or perhaps even introduce people to this history. But you said that there is some of Robert Smalls in you, and this is a man who stole a Confederate steamship and delivered it to the North and continued on in this war. That's a pretty brazen man. How does he live with you?
Well, you know, Robert Smalls, born enslaved, never had a formal education, sort of beat the odds, so to speak. When he absconded that ship, the Planner, very creatively, sailed it to freedom, got his freedom, built wealth. And when Robert Smalls, who became a real hero of the Civil War, in fact, if you go through all the battles of the Civil War, nobody measures up to Robert Smalls in heroic situations. He was in 17 skirmishes while navigating that ship. One great one that that made him a captain. A lot of people talk about when this person, the first African-American captain, the first African-American general, Robert Smalls was made captain of that ship back in the 1860s. So he has a remarkable career. But then, when he went back to Beaufort, his former enslaver passed away, left his widow penniless. Robert Smalls brought her back into the house because he purchased the house that he had been a slave in. And he brought the widow of his enslaver and kept her in that house until she passed away in, I think she passed away in 1904. So the kind of benevolence that you see in him and his service, the kind of stubbornness that showed itself in him often. I think you find a little bit of that in Jim Clyburn.
I think people have been following politics for years, and you certainly know that. I want to move forward to the present. And as you, again, remind people in your book, this is a cautionary tale as we think about accessibility in this country, especially into politics, but in all realms. To what level are you concerned that there is a direct match between what happened during Reconstruction and what we see in this country right now?
Well, after Reconstruction came to an end, now I know a lot of people will say Reconstruction lasted up to the end of the century. Not true. Reconstruction came to an end in 1877, when all of the troops were taken out of the South. Rutherford B. Hayes made a deal with the House of Representatives, a deal that resulted in him becoming president of the United States by a single vote. He won the presidency in the Electoral College by a vote of 185 to 184 on a promise to bring an end to Reconstruction, and which began Jim Crow. And so I think that if you look at Project 2025, that became such a centerpiece of the last election, and look at the Edgefield Plan that was written in 1877 to be guidance to the so-called redeemers in the election that Wade, at the same time, the Hayes became president, Wade Hampton became governor of South Carolina. And that started so much of the kind of activities you see taking place today, trying to stop the count of the Electoral College, the redistricting that took place after 1877 that moved South Carolina from having 4 African Americans in the Congress down to a single one. I'm the only African American to serve in Congress from South Carolina today. So much of what happened back then and the way it happened is exactly what's happening now. And even down to the so-called red shirts that they were instructed, the redeemers, to go out and go into these meetings to keep Black folks from participating and wear red shirts. Today they're wearing red caps. You go through this whole thing and you will see that whoever put Project 2025 and the other activities together studied this period of time, because it's exactly the way that it occurred back then, that which is happening today.
Well, Congressman, which leads to my final question for you, which, again, when you talk about the way things happened and the way things that are happening right now, when people are wondering about checks and balances and where the checks are not being met, where the balance is turning into imbalance, thinking of the seizure of oil tankers and a president in Venezuela, the signaling of taking over Greenland, shootings by ICE agents, down to the destruction of the White House, which is supposed to have parameters protecting the White House, or the renaming of the Kennedy Center. Takes an act of Congress to change that, but we see that name has been changed, at least in signage. What do you tell the American people, especially with the history lesson you've just given us, about the state of checks and balances in our country?
Just because a thing has happened before doesn't mean its occurrence today must lead to the same result. I think that one of the reasons I wrote this book, and I put, and I call it the cautionary tale, and I think I expressed that in the epilogue to the book. It's just saying to people, you can't drop out of the system. One thing you did not mention, and that is the current threat that's being made to use the Insurrection Act. The moment that happens, that means that there ain't no more elections taking place. And that means that we will no longer be a democracy. And so people have got to decide, do I want to continue this pursuit of a more perfect union? We're not a perfect nation. Democracy itself cannot be perfect. Participation by people lead to a lot of always in pursuit of perfection in order to create a more perfect union, an admission that is not perfect. If we're going to do that, we must continue to participate in the process. We cannot allow ourselves to be discouraged to the point that we drop out of the system. That is what I maintain is taking place today. These things are manufactured. Everything that's going on in Minnesota today has been manufactured. Where's the insurrection? Nobody. There's much less activity going on in Minnesota today than took place in Mississippi in the 1960s. And that wasn't an insurrection. That was people participated in the First Amendment rights that they get from our United States Constitution. And so the only shooting taking place down out there in Minnesota is coming from the authorities. I haven't seen one single weapon from these people who are demonstrating. And so that is what we have to keep in check on, not allow misrepresentations and outright falsehoods to guide our actions.
These are words from a teacher of history before he was a congressman. Thank you for your context. Thank you for your legacy and your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Congressman Jim Clyburn is a Democrat, the U.S. representative for South Carolina's 6th Congressional District, and former House Majority Whip. His new book is The First Eight, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressman Who Shaped a Nation. Again, thank you. Coming up, we're getting a jump on the Boston Celtic Music Festival with Scottish Fish. They're next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
By a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
If you really want to know what's going on in this country...
Hi, my name is Isaac. I'm calling from Columbus, Ohio.
You have to get away from the extremes and listen to The Middle.
This is Samantha calling from St. Louis, Missouri.
On The Middle with Jeremy Hobson, I take your calls live on some of the biggest issues we face.
While I have hope for change, there are so many issues that I feel like are not being discussed on either side.
Join me each week on The Middle.
Tonight at 9 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked number 2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal 2025. Babson.edu/grad programs. And Explo, from culinary arts to veterinary science, Explo's summer program helps middle schoolers to find their spark. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. Priority deadline February 13th. And Brightbound, helping students as young as middle school identify their strengths, explore their passions, and navigate a path to a rewarding career. Learn more at brite.bound.org.
For that next birthday, holiday, or special occasion, you can give a standout gift. A GBH membership. Thousands of hours of your favorite PBS shows, event deals, and local business discounts. Learn more at gbh.org/gift membership.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. You're listening to The Culture Show, and we're listening to Scottish Fish. They're a Boston-based Celtic quintet featuring fiddles and cello, who first came together as kids by way of the Boston Harbor Scottish Fiddle School. You can catch them at the Boston Celtic Music Festival, presented by Club Passim, this Friday through Sunday in venues throughout Cambridge and Somerville, and intimate clubs and neighborhood performance spaces, the kind of rooms where Celtic music is meant to be heard up close. house. Poignantly for us here at GBH, Scottish Fish are this year's Brian O'Donovan Legacy Artist, which means you'll hear them in multiple settings across the weekend. Welcome to all of you. The entire quintet is here with me in the studio, and I'm joined at the mic by Julia Homa. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, how would you describe the sound and the group that you have assembled all these years since being childhood friends?
So basically we started out as a group of friends who just liked playing music together. And so I think we've kept a lot of that kind of jam sound that we started with because we heard some tunes that we liked and we just wanted to play it together. And then over the years, we started getting more creative with the arrangements and doing things that were more complicated. And we were given more gig opportunities. So we started with the jam sound and then we kind of progressed since then. But I think we managed to keep that energy with us.
So I'm curious, you were all these young kids is from 7 to 11, basically, when you all came together? I'm getting nods from your colleagues here. How did you all get exposed to Celtic music so young?
Basically, a lot of it is due to the incredible scene that's here in Boston. And we all met, some of them went to elementary school and kindergarten together. And then I actually met Caroline at a Suzuki camp in Vermont that was recommended by my classical violin teacher. And then we all kind of ended up at the Boston Harbor Scottish Fiddle School in 2011 to 2013 is when we all started going there.
And how did you realize that you could come together and make this music?
We started as a band playing for the camp's Ceilidh, which is just like a party at the end of the week, and you can form a band with the other campers there and play for either dancing or play for a concert. And so we wanted to play for that. And so we started putting music together for that at the camp.
I'm also struck by the fact that this is a long span of time we're talking about now. It's almost magical that you've all stayed together and continue to do this and continue to evolve the group. To what do you attribute being able to stay together and the drive to stay together?
I think the biggest thing is that we started out as friends and have stayed really close friends. And so that was definitely the impetus to create the group. And then staying together is just we loved this music and this community that we have here in Boston, and being able, given the opportunity by playing team and the BCM Fest to play every year together, would give us something to look forward to and create new music for. And then we just we're at a place now where we get to prioritize doing this together, and that's really exciting for us.
What does that mean to be able to prioritize?
Basically, if we work other jobs, we make sure that they're flexible enough that we can do. We do 2 or 3 big tours a year. We've been over in Europe a few times, and then on the West Coast as well.
Now that you're adults, again, now that you're this full-fledged internationally touring group, how do you describe what this music, what Celtic means to you in terms of the community that you were just talking about, and making sure that it continues and that it stays with all of us?
Wow. Basically a lot of the repertoire that we play and the tunes that we've learned have been learned from people in this community, in Boston specifically, and then the U.S. Scottish music community more largely. And then as we've gone international, we've learned music. We go to a jam session in Scotland and we come back with a few tunes that we love playing as a group now. And so being able to play this music together that we've picked up from all these places in the world and bring it home here to Boston to play at this festival, as well as play it with people in this community, is just really special for us.
Including music you're about to play right now in our studio. Tell me a little bit about the piece we're about to hear.
Yeah, so this tune that we're going to play is called Annie's, and it's from our new album Currently that we released over the summer. And it is comprised of 3 tunes. One of them is a more contemporary Cape Breton piece called Annie's New Heart, and then we go into a traditional Scottish tune called Hamish the Carpenter, and then we end with a tune named Roy Michaels, which is by the amazing Ryan McCassin, who is a Scottish fiddler from Washington State.
Well, I will give you a chance to get your fiddle and step up, and I'll remind people that we're talking to Scottish Fish right now. They're appearing as part of the Boston Celtic Music Festival, which kicks off today and runs through Sunday at performances all around Somerville and Cambridge. It's presented by Club Passim. So again, this is Annie's, presented by the Celtic Quintet, Scottish Fish. was incredible. That Scottish Fish with their piece Annie's, a melange of influences. You can hear more of them throughout the weekend at the Boston Celtic Music Festival, which kicks off today. I think I can speak for our entire region when it said you just lifted up everybody's spirits. I can't even talk. I have such energy. And I was watching all of your faces as you were performing. This is an adventure for you to perform, it feels like.
Yeah, well, we have so much fun playing together. And I mean, we've been playing together for so long. This is our 13th year at the Boston Celtic Music Festival. And just like, we have so many inside jokes that like you make eye contact with someone during the performance and I don't know, you can kind of have a laugh together while you're performing.
Well, how does the arranging come together?
So basically for most of the pieces, we kind of sit in a circle in one of our apartments and we go through all the ideas that we have. Like often someone will bring a tune that they like, that they've heard somewhere, either at a jam or in a recording, or it's something that they've written themselves. And we bring these tunes together and we are like, what do we think? We use this word compelling. We're like, what would be compelling to play? Like, how do we want to create this music together in a way that like moves us?
Well, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask actors, painters, musicians is when do you know you have it? When do you know it's compelling?
Well, actually, the funny thing about this arrangement that we just played is that we didn't think we had it, and we had we created a recording at a rehearsal, and then we sent a voice memo to everyone, and we were like, I don't think the tunes sound good in this order. Like, I think we should change it. Like, I think we should play different things. And then over the next few days, we listened to it, and then we came back to it, and then we're like, no, I think this is it. So it's not an immediate moment of like knowing that you have it, but it's kind of a like building up over like a period of time where it's like, I can't imagine this any other way now.
And do you find yourselves typically having consensus like that?
I think we do.
Everybody's nodding behind you, I can point out.
Well, I can't see them, but yeah. I believe you. I think that's something that we have very similar tastes. It's not always exactly the same. But yeah, I think that's something that's really special is that we like similar things and we like the music that we create together.
And as I understand, a lot of the influences, the primary influences, are coming from Scotland and Cape Breton?
Yes.
Why those two regions in particular?
So that's just mainly the repertoire that we were exposed to, like at this, the Boston Harbour Scottish Fiddle School. They would bring in teachers, like amazing fiddle players from Scotland and Cape Breton every summer. And so we started playing those tunes and we got exposed to those styles. And there's different types of ornamentation that are in those music and like bowing techniques. So that's just kind of what we were exposed to first, and that style of music really resonated with us. So those are our main influences.
So when and how did you name the group?
So the name comes from 2011, and we were playing for the Camp Cayley, and we needed to decide a name for it. And something about this camp is it was on an island, and the food was very, very bad. And so because we were 11-year-old children, we would bring our own food, and it would be mostly candy. And that year we had been eating a lot of Swedish fish. And we're like, oh, we're at a Scottish music camp, and we've been eating all this Swedish fish. Wouldn't it be the funniest thing ever to call ourselves Scottish Fish? And we now can't change it. We've been told that it's too late to change it. So
does that suggest you want to change it?
It's a little bit silly. And it's like, well, and the more exposure we get like worldwide, people expect us to be from Scotland, and we're not. So it's based on my accent, but so we don't want to like falsely advertise ourselves. And so that was kind of the reason why we thought about changing it. But it's kind of a fun story, and it really celebrates how long we've been a group and playing together.
It actually, I thought, has an elegance too, especially if you don't know that story. And even if you do know the story, it still is lovely. I want to ask you, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's very poignant for us here at GBH to know that you're the Brian O'Donovan Artist this year, the Brian O'Donovan Legacy Artist. What does that designation mean to you all? Of course, for the people listening who might not know, he was a legend in our midst who spent his whole career moving Irish music, Celtic music forward, having a show here on GBH and just being such a champion of live performance.
Yeah, so that is just such an honor for us. We all knew Brian. We've met him a number of times. he invited us to play on a Celtic Sojourn back in 2014 or something. And that was just a huge honor to be considered as members of this community when we were still so young. He was the forefront of bringing a lot of the Celtic music in Boston together, and the scene I don't think would be as vibrant and have so many people who playing all this music without him. So it's really, really special for us to be the legacy artist this year. He did so much for this community, and we can only hope to contribute even a fraction of what he did.
Well, final question for you. We've been talking about your group in particular, but this is obviously the Boston Celtic Music Festival. People will have an opportunity to listen to a lot of music. How do you describe what opportunity is in store this weekend as the festival unfolds throughout Cambridge and Somerville?
Yeah, so I think we start off tonight. There is the first round at Passim. I think there are a few tickets left. I looked, there's one seat right all the way at the front if you want to be all the way at the front. And then the Cayley is tonight. There's also a Cape Breton set, and all of our friends have dressed up as the amazing Cape Breton fiddler, Jerry Holland, and have recreated his album covers with fake mustaches. It's super awesome. You should go see that. And then there's some Scottish dancing after, and then throughout the rest of the weekend over at Passim and the Crystal Ballroom and the Rockwell and the Burren, which is celebrating 30 years.
Yes.
There's going to be all these amazing musicians. Most of them are from Boston. Some of them have come from further away. We are so excited. Yeah, and then we're playing tomorrow, opening for Old Blind Dogs at Arts at the Armory. And then we have our own set at the Day Fast at the Crystal Ballroom at 2 p.m. on Saturday. And then there's a nightcap with Altan that we are also opening for. And Lindsay's going to be there, Lindsay O'Donovan, and she'll do a tribute to Brian. And then, there'll be a lot of other musicians from Boston doing that. I do think that's sold out, but...
Well, yeah. It's an amazing festival that's happening. We just had such a treat to hear you all here today. Thank you so much. Congratulations on all of your success. It's been a delight to have you all here.
Thank you so much for having us. We had such a great time.
That's good. I know you were nervous. Are you relaxed now? It's all easy, right?
All good.
The Boston Celtic Music Festival kicks off today and runs through this Sunday, January 18th, with performances happening at Club Passim, Somerville Theatre, Crystal Ballroom, and Arts at the Armory, the Burren, and the Rockwell. It's all presented by Club Passim, and you can learn more at passim.org. The Boston-based Celtic quintet Scottish Fish are this year's Brian O'Donovan Legacy Artist, which means you'll catch them in multiple settings, as you just heard across the weekend. Scottish Fish are Ava Montesi, Caroline Dressler, Julia Heibel, Julia Homa, and Maggie McPhail. Thank you all so much for being with us. Coming up, To Be Read, a new writing and publishing conference opening the doors to writers new and rising. If you're looking for entry into the sometimes elusive publishing world, you'll want to know all about what's happening this weekend when A-list authors, publishers, and agents are all in town. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
In Kenya, most of the cars on the road are used imports that run on gas. A new company hopes to change that by producing EVs domestically.
All my life, I've been watching documentaries on vehicles being manufactured out there. One question that always came into my mind, are we able to do this here in Kenya?
That story plus the top global news next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Speakeasy Stage, presenting Job, the relentless psychological thriller for the digital age. Runs January 16th through February 7th at Speakeasy Stage. SpeakeasyStage.com.
Support for GBH comes from you and Cure Alzheimer's Fund.
We fund the best research in the world so that we can make Alzheimer's a historical footnote.
Meg Smith, CEO.
GBH has such a wonderful, strong, and earned history of extraordinary storytelling and of extraordinary scientific education. It is fantastic to align with an organization that has such a deserved reputation.
To learn more, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
Your trusted local news, covering the stories that matter to you. Stay informed and stay connected on the GBH News YouTube channel. Subscribe and watch on your phone, tablet, or smart TV. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. If publishing can feel like a closed-door industry full of gatekeepers, guesswork, and who knows who vibes, a new writing and publishing conference is throwing those doors open. It's called TBR, To Be Read, and this Saturday it brings writers together with A-list agents, editors, booksellers, and other publishing professionals for a day focused on craft, career strategy, and the forces reshaping the book world, including AI. It's co-founded by novelist Whitney Scherer, the author of The Age of Light, along with writer Sonia Larson. And one of the conference's most ambitious efforts is Publishing Matchmaker, a system designed to change the usual plot. Instead of writers chasing agents, agents indicate interest first, and then the writers book one-on-one meetings on site. Whitney joins us now. Thank you so much for being here. When I learned of this from you, I thought this was extraordinary because we know in any industry, but especially the arts, especially publishing, how difficult it can be for people to just get the break they need. We know there's a lot of talent out there, and I sometimes get a little, I don't know, even scared to think of people who are so deserving a chance but don't have it, and now you've created one.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. And I have to say, when we were communicating about this, I was so excited to hear your enthusiasm in it because, you know, when you're in the publishing world and the writing world, it feels so insular. And, you know, just being able to share this thing that we've been doing and working so hard on with you was like, oh, this is really exciting.
Yeah, it's real. So tell me about how this came together, what the drive was that you had. As we mentioned, you're a published author yourself, so you know this world.
Yeah, yes, I do. I definitely do know this world and have been kind of working in the creative writing world in various ways for pretty much my whole life and have a MFA in creative writing and all of that. And had wanted to do something like this for years and years. And in fact, I was thinking back when I applied to grad school, my personal statement said, you know, after I graduate from graduate school, this was a long time ago too, I want to start a, you know, nonprofit writing center or a conference or something. So it's been something in my mind for a long time. And I've gotten really enmeshed in the Boston writing community over the years by doing events and things like that. Met my friend Sonia Larson and we worked together for about a decade and just absolutely loved working together. And so the two of us had been desperate to do that again and desperate to find a way to bring writers together, create opportunities for them, and just try to change that narrative that all writers face, of how hard it is to break into the publishing industry, how cliquish it is, how insular it is, and all of that. And so that's really how the conference was born.
Well, I was really struck as I was looking at who is coming. I mean, this is really striking. You have Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House, CAA, Celeste Ng, I mean, best-selling authors.
Yeah.
Especially for the publishers and the agents, I think that's a really big deal to get them in the room. Why do they want to be there?
That is a great question. And we are so excited that they want to be there. And they do. I mean, I think what is so interesting about this experience was we were we were initially really worried, like, will anybody want to come to this thing? It's brand new. Like, who are we? Why would they come? And we got an amazing response from the publishing industry and from agents. And I think a piece of that is that there is this hunger for people to come together in person. And there have been, through the years, other conferences and events, and certainly there still are events like this for the industry, for writers, but there aren't as many as there used to be. And, there was like a huge industry event called BEA, Book Expo America, and that faded away during COVID and is no more. And, things like that. So there just aren't as many opportunities for people to come together. And so I think a piece of it was that, just a chance to just have fun and connect and feel some positive energy around the publishing industry that I think oftentimes lately there is sort of more of a negative feeling about sometimes.
And clearly they're craving finding new talent.
Yeah, yes, I know. And really, really excited to meet the writers who are coming. And I think one of the things that we are hoping with the conference is that we get people who are really committed to having a writing career long term. And so the writers who are meeting with agents while they're there are people who, a lot of them, it's not their first manuscript. They've been querying, they've been in the trenches kind of trying to break in, and they're really committed to it. And I think that commitment shines through in their work, and their work is ready. And so the agents are responding to that and excited to be meeting that type of writer.
Well, tell me about how people, first of all, if people are just tuning in, we're talking about the To Be Read conference. It's going to be happening. It's a writing and publishing conference happening this Saturday, January 17th on the campus of Lesley College in Cambridge. To learn more, you can go to tbr.boston. We're talking with Whitney Scherer, author of The Age of Light and one of the co-founders of this conference. What about this app that's been created that puts agents and writers together? And you made a pretty extraordinary discovery about how people can misperceive who might be interested in their work.
Yeah. So let me just, as briefly as I can, explain the process. So the Publishing Matchmaker program is, we have all of these writers who signed up and they said, I have a manuscript ready to go and I need an agent. So they all submitted their work to this portal on this app that we made for them. And then every agent who's coming to the conference, there's 23 of them coming, they read through every single manuscript that we had submitted. And they were the ones who said, yes, I want to meet with this person. No, I don't want to meet with this person. And we set it up kind of like Tinder. That's really the best way that we can describe it, because we also asked the writers to say which agents they were interested in meeting. And then, it was like, oh, you can get a double match. Like, you're interested in this agent. The agent is interested in you. Huzzah. But what we found was that so often there were agents who were interested in the writer's manuscript that the writer had totally overlooked by a factor of 3 to 1, which we find so interesting. We've made all these wonky charts. We've done all this stuff, just because it's so interesting. As a writer, there are all these sort of traditional ways that you are supposed to go about finding an agent. And it's like, look for somebody who represents work that is similar to yours. Use your networking skills, of course. Read through unbelievable piles of information on databases, that kind of thing. But you don't know what someone's taste is. Yeah. You just have no idea. And books are art, and you just don't know. Art is not going to resonate with someone just because they liked one book about Paris doesn't mean they're going to like the next book about Paris. So I think it's really interesting to think as a writer about this opportunity. I mean, we see it as an opportunity that there are all these agents out there who you might think would never give you the time of day, but in fact, they're the ones who are the most interested in what you're doing.
So we can set realistic expectations. People listening, they don't want to pay their admission fee and come and think they'll automatically be published. But you mentioned people who have a manuscript. So who do you expect to come and who would you like to be seeing there? Yeah, so we're really... the people who've signed up and the ones that we want to have come are people who are sort of poised to get an agent and begin their publishing journey. And that is you're already pretty far along when you're at that point, right? Because you've been working on something for a long time. So we want writers at that level all the way through people who have published 5-10 books already. And we have a lot of attendees who are coming who could just as easily be leading the sessions because they're just as knowledgeable and they're all coming to kind of learn from one another. And really that's one of the things that we're most excited about is just this sense that it's not these
presenters speaking from on high to these novices. It's more like a conversation among people who are all doing the same work and have been doing it for a long time.
You're also going to be dealing with AI. And as people who listen to this show know, we talk about the good with AI, and we talk a lot about the bad with AI, but there is some good that comes with it too. How are you addressing it this weekend?
Yeah, so that's one of the panels that I'm most excited about. We're calling it The Robot Overlords Are Coming. And we've got the Director of Policy and Advocacy from the Authors Guild, who was one of the lawyers who was involved in that seminal lawsuit with Anthropic. He's on the panel with two writers and a fantastic journalist named Ed Nwatka from Publishers Weekly. And they're going to be talking about both sides, the good and the bad. Like, I think, when we called it The Robot Overlords Are Coming, it's like they're coming. And so as creative writers, we have to see, like, is there anything of this we can harness for good? How do we continue our careers knowing that this is out there? And we're really hoping for a really lively discussion with both positive and negative sides being addressed.
Well, I think it's fabulous what you have done. Thank you for assembling this. And as I said, so many luminaries will be there this weekend. What an opportunity for people.
Yay!
So good to see you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jared.
Whitney Scher is the author of The Age of Light and co-founder of To Be Read, a new writing and publishing conference. It happens this Saturday, January 17th at Lesley College in Cambridge. To learn more, go to tbr.boston. Thank you again. And thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Rumors of MTV's demise are greatly exaggerated, we think. Good thing, because it seems a lot of people still want their MTV, or at least their old MTV. Plus, poet Amanda Gorman making sure the world knows shooting victim Renee Good was a fellow poet. We'll have that and much more on the show tomorrow. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Mers. Our engineer is Bill Piazzatelli. Brad Lewis produced today's YouTube live stream. We want to thank Sai Patel for engineering our musical guests, Scottish Fish. If you ever miss us here on the radio, check out the Culture Show podcast. Just go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Pro Arte Chamber Orchestra, presenting A Musical Menagerie, a family concert co-presented by the Music Performance Trust Fund, January 18th at 3 at Newton War Memorial Auditorium. Reservations at proarte.org. In a new series, explore the causes, impacts, and solutions of climate change through the stories of people who remind us of the beauty of our world. Watch Climate California tomorrow at 6:30 on GBH 44.
I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, the Trump administration is pausing immigrant visa processing for nationals of 75 countries. We'll examine the impact. And Boston is getting its first ever women's pro soccer team. Boston Legacy FC's general manager stops in to talk about the team's inaugural season and more. It's all starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at